GG. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. I believe you can hear me. My name is NAJI Mujahid. I'm an attorney. I am the legal liaison for the Imam Jamil Action Network. I've been involved with political prisoner work for a little while now, going back to I think 2007, when I was still in college. I was a journalism major, and I was doing an internship, and I was given an assignment to go cover a press conference that was announcing the the case against the, or not the case against, but the advocacy for in the San Francisco 8. One of which of the San Francisco 8, JALIL MUNTAQIM, who you may have heard from yesterday, was recently released. But from there, that was I think one of the first moments in my life where I was introduced to the idea and the reality of political prisoners and prisoners of war in the United States, and particularly those that came out of the Black liberation struggle and the people's liberation struggles of the 50s, 60s, and 70s. And for me, it was upsetting to know that these people who had dedicated and sacrificed so much on our behalf had been left behind in the lines, forgotten about, and were not receiving support that mirrored the support that they gave. They weren't receiving support from the people for whom they gave so much support for and gave so much for. And so I think this is a very critical component, of our advocacy. Whatever particular issue you may most be passionate about, whether it's the environment, whether it's civil rights issues, whether it's issues related to Black people, poverty, homophobia, Islamophobia, like whatever it is, if it's whatever social issue it is, the advocacy for political prisoners is a part of that, because when you want to change society in a way that the state is not in favor of, you are lining yourself up for the potential of backlash and repression. And therefore, you have to have a mechanism to deal with that eventuality and that possibility and reality in this case. And so, when we advocate for other issues related to our communities, the fact that there are still political prisoners that were fighting for the same issues is indicative of the state's lack of any lip service they may give to support for your struggle is disingenuous. Otherwise they wouldn't have people locked up in dungeons, for the very same. And so this is why, when you see movements, no matter where they are in the world or when they were in the world, often when it comes to trying to, establish peace or, reconciliation, negotiation, the first order of business is often free our political prisoners, and then we can talk. Because once you do that, you are, first of all, recognizing that these people, they weren't social deviants. They were standing up against, an issue with full, understanding, and discipline and commitment to creating change and advocating for change. And so before we can go any further in this talk, we need you to do that, because it's a sign of goodwill. It's a sign that you're serious, and it's a sign that you understand what it is that we're fighting for and why. And you're not just going to, frame it as, again, some type of, criminal endeavor, for the sake of, so-called criminality. So, that's, why I got involved. And that is why I believe this issue is important, more generally. And Imam Jamil in particular, of all the political prisoners there are. I think Imam Jamil is one that deserves special attention, especially from the Muslim community, because of what he represents. This intersection of the Black liberation struggle in the United States and coming into Islam. Um, so anyone who has themselves as Malcolm X as a hero, like Imam Jamil, represents that same, is of that same ilk, represents that same, is cut from the same cloth. And it's for that reason that Imam Jamil has been targeted, not recently, but since the late '60s, when he came into prominence in Washington, D.C. as a student activist with the National Action Group, and then later SNCC, the Students for Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, of which most of you are probably familiar with. He became chairman after Stokely Carmichael, Kwame Ture. And it was at that time when the FBI, and through their counterintelligence program, identified him in particular. The counterintelligence program was broad sweeping around the country. Different states, different cities were targeted, different groups, but individuals were not, often named. But when you talk about the individuals that were named, we're talking about, Elijah Muhammad, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Stokely Carmichael, Max Stanford / Muhammad Ahmed, and different people like that, significant leaders within the movement that they were targeting or keeping a close eye on because of one of the points within the counterintelligence program of preventing the rise of a messiah. Someone who could electrify the people, unify the people, galvanize the people. And many of you may have seen the movie Judas and the Black Messiah featuring Fred Hampton. But that's where that phrase comes from, the reference to a messiah, to a religious leader, to someone, of that kind of stature. And this is who they saw Imam Jamil as, or having the potential to be, as he was still a very young man in his early 20s. And so the surveillance on Imam Jamil began at that time, almost over 50 years ago. And it's continued. And it continued up until 2000, when I believe it was one of the judges or the judge in his case, or maybe it was a sheriff, was quoted as saying, "We finally got him." Might have been an FBI agent, but someone prominent within his prosecution, having the opinion of, "We finally got him," because they had been surveilling him in his community that he established in West End, Atlanta, from its very inceptions. We know that there were informants and agent provocateurs infiltrating the organization, infiltrating the masjid, and they were looking for ways to set him up. He was investigated in connection with multiple crimes and homicides throughout the Atlanta area. They were always looking for a way to get to Imam Jamil. And they finally found a way in March of 2000, when there was a shooting and a police officer was killed. A police officer had come to the masjid and to the community store attached to the masjid looking for Imam Jamil to serve a warrant for a court appearance for a traffic case that he was involved in, And, they came there, and there was a person there by the name of Otis Jackson, or James Santos, I think is also known as James Santos, who was he was there looking for Imam Jamil himself. He was a gang member. He was on parole with an ankle bracelet, no less. And he had come there seeking the Imam's assistance because of the Imam's prominence in brokering truces between gangs. I think if you've been following along this program for the past few days, you may have heard some of his involvement with that, with brokering truces between gangs and things of that nature. And so he was coming looking for help, of that kind, and also to lend whatever support he could to Imam Jamil. But because he was on parole, because he was not supposed to be where he was. When the police came, he got nervous and thought they might have been there for him. Actually, if memory serves me correct, related to the records, the police did try to stop him, question him, to see, not knowing who he was yet, but just, black guy, let's go talk to him and, see what's going on. So he opened fire, shot the cops, was also shot. And it was the both officers, when they were relating the events in the beginning of the investigation, related that they were sure that they shot the guy who shot them. Other eyewitnesses mentioned that the shootout, they mentioned that, and this was during the course of trial, they testified that there was a shootout, they saw it. That was not Imam Jamil. How do we know it wasn't Imam Jamil? Because I know who Imam Jamil is, and he don't look like that. And the guy who the initial reports described was someone who was 5'7", 5'8", 150, 160 pounds, gray eyes, and was shot. And there was blood found on the scene that did not belong to the officers. But Imam Jamil is not 5'8", he's 6'5", 187 pounds, so tall, lanky, almost impossible to miss. And it wasn't until later that he was identified. The officer who identified him as the person he shot identified him when he was in the hospital on morphine, being with his wounds and stuff being attended to. And so Imam Jamil was later picked up in Alabama. The crime scene that was created in Alabama at his arrest, they found some weapons. Ballistics were not done, or there was no DNA. Imam Jamil's DNA wasn't found on the weapons. The the fingerprints, ballistics. There was nothing. Nothing about those weapons were directly linked to Imam Jamil. It's claimed that the same type of ammunition may have been used, but I mean, we're talking about 9mm, 223 bullets, like very ubiquitous types of ammunition. So, and I may be getting a little bit ahead of myself, but I'll circle back to those facts. So as far as the case of Imam Jamil right now, there are two things going on that, inshallah, could lead to his release, or at the very least, a new trial. And that is, not too long ago, the Atlanta Fulton County District Attorney's Office created what's called a Conviction Integrity Unit. And a Conviction Integrity Unit, these Conviction Integrity Units exist in different parts of the country, different jurisdictions, and their purpose is for the district attorney's office to review past convictions to make sure that the convictions were, were good, that they were right, in a recognition that sometimes people, innocent people, get convicted of crimes they didn't commit. So the Conviction Integrity Unit is trying to prevent that from happening. And so they go back and they review cases, to see if there's any, people can petition, submit cases for review if there's new evidence, anything like that. Because in the courts are very strict with the way appeals are, what type of issues can be appealed, what type of evidence can be used to support the appeals. It can be very limiting. But with Conviction Integrity Units, they take, whatever you got to show them, they'll take a look at it. And so Imam Jamil's case was submitted for review. And I'll circle back and I'll go over some of the issues that have been raised in that request. But there's also an outstanding habeas corpus petition, which has been 20 years in the making. The Imam Jamil, his original conviction was appealed. The appeal was denied. So it went up from the state level or the lower level courts in the state up to the state Supreme Court, and then from the state courts into the federal courts. And there have been multiple opportunities to amend and change some of these petitions for the habeas corpus because of changes in law, which I'll explain in a moment. So right now, the petition that's the habeas corpus that is pending, the issues there's a Fifth Amendment issue being raised. There's a Brady issue being raised. Brady is the Supreme Court determination that in a case where there's exculpatory evidence or evidence that could point to a person's innocence, the prosecution is required to provide that information to the defense. Okay, so if the prosecution, for example, has, a video showing that, a person that's being accused, wasn't there or something like that, they have to give that to the defense. They can't say, oh, this doesn't fit our case, let's tuck that away and, and burn it or something like that. They got to turn it over. And so there's evidence that was not turned over to the defense. And there's an issue related to his right not to incriminate himself and not to testify at trial. And so at his trial, he didn't testify. You don't have to. It is the state's burden of proof to prove their case against the accused. The person who's being accused of the crime does not have to prove their innocence. This is how the system is supposed to work. I'm not at all saying, as an attorney, not at all saying that it operates the way it purports to operate, but this is what they say. So a person you do not have to prove your innocence. They have to prove your guilt. So you can sit back, relax in your trial. You don't got to say a word. You don't got to present any witnesses. You don't got to present any evidence of your own, if you don't want to, or if you don't think it would be helpful. It's entirely the state's job to bring forth their evidence and their witnesses and to prove their case and to convince the jury beyond a reasonable doubt that you are the guilty person. And if you do not testify in your own defense, the jury or the finder of fact, the judge, cannot use that as a negative inference against you, like we might do in real life. If somebody accused you of something and you just didn't say anything, someone might assume that, oh, you ain't saying nothing because I'm right, or because you did it. That's why you don't want to say nothing. You don't want to get on the stand because as soon as you get on the stand, all these, you're just not going to be able to, to handle the pressure. You can't make that assumption. But in the prosecutor's closing argument, he said things to draw a negative inference to the jury. He created what's been referred to as a mock cross-examination, where he asked these questions, like, to the jury, if the defendant, there's all these things that you don't know. And if you could ask the defendant, this question, you could ask him that question. Where was he? Why did, just all this, like, it's totally improper, totally improper. And the defense attorney objected, asked for a mistrial. It was denied. And so, there was that issue. There was an issue related to effective assistance of counsel, because the person I referred to earlier, Otis Jackson, reason why we know he did it, in addition to the evidence that shows that it was him or someone else, was that he confessed to it. He confessed to it under oath. And it's not like if, NAJI Mujahid says, hey, you know what? I shot the sheriff. It was me. People like, what do you mean it was you? You were in DC at the time. What are you talking about? So there would be no, I could go say it was me, but there would be no other evidence to suggest what I'm saying is true. It would just look like, oh, this is a guy who's Imam Jamil's friend, and he's just trying to take the beef for him. So, the courts will not just accept any old body's testimony saying that they did something. There has to be other evidence to show that this could be true. And in this case, as mentioned, there was, witnesses and so forth that, evidence to suggest that it was either Otis Jackson, it was someone other than Imam Jamil, and very well might have been Otis Jackson based on the information that we have. As was mentioned, he was on probation, which of his parole, which got violated, after this. So at the time of Imam Jamil's trial, I don't know if you roll my window up. At the time of Imam Jamil's trial, he was in jail in Florida, I believe. And the investigators did go talk to him in Florida, but the prosecutors, said that that he was mentally unstable. He was ill, and the evidence, the ankle monitor information, wasn't going to, it was just like all of this obstruction. to the process. And his legal team at the time, could have and probably should have done more. So it was part of the basis of that claim. So that evidence didn't get presented at trial. And there were other issues that were related. And during the course of the appeal, the courts acknowledged that Imam Jamil's Fifth Amendment right was in fact violated. It was other issue related to his Sixth Amendment right, but they acknowledged that his rights were violated, but it did not rise to the level of they considered it to be a harmless error. And a harmless error is when something happened that wasn't right, that was wrong, perhaps even illegal, but despite that, the conviction still would have happened. It was a harmless error. Like this, had this been different, it wouldn't have made any difference. He still would have been convicted. So we're not going to go back and have a whole new trial. We're not going to go back and have a whole new thing just so you can get this part right and then get convicted anyway. So waste of everyone's time. So they looked at it like a harmless error, and his appeal was denied. A year ago, in the case of State versus Lane, it was determined, part of the rationale behind that denial was because in Georgia, the law at the time was that in instances like this, each individual issue, each individual not offense, but I can't think of the right word, but each individual thing that happened that was wrong, that shouldn't have happened, is viewed independently of the others. So this happened, harmless error. That happened, harmless error. That happened too, harmless error. But you're not allowed to look at them all together to say, all right, well, maybe individually there were all these harmless errors, but what about, okay, but what about when you put them all together? Now what do you have? 1 + 1 + 1 = 3 instead of 1 being 1 being 1. That wasn't the way the law was, but that law was overturned. And so now in the state of Georgia, when you have cases like that, where there are multiple issues in a trial, multiple appealable issues in the trial, you have to look at the totality. You have to look at the cumulative effect of all of these different things. And so Imam Jamil's case, along with any other case where a person was convicted or their appeal was denied, in such circumstances, they can, they can petition for either a new trial or some type of redress of grievances. And so at the time, Imam Jamil's, his habeas corpus was still pending. So now that is a part of the habeas corpus along with the Brady issue that I related earlier. The Brady issue relates to the fact that Imam Jamil's wife, attorney KAREEM El-Amin, had filed a Freedom of Information request to the FBI during the trial, during the appeal, to get more information about the investigation against Imam Jamil in the surveillance overall. And so what has been found out after the trial, after the appeal, was that there are 44,000 pages of documents related to the FBI's surveillance and investigation on Imam Jamil. And only 700 of the 44,000 pages of documents, only 700 pages have been given to, have been turned over. And within those 700 pages is where we found out, the information I alluded to earlier about the BOLO, be on the lookout. The FBI issued a BOLO, which is a be on lookout announcement, to the other police agencies. Be on the lookout in relation to the shooting of these police officers, a person who was 5'7", 150 pounds with gray eyes. That was the FBI saying that. So there was that issue. And there was another issue related to the investigation that happened in Alabama, where the sheriff who was leading the dog team, the sniffing dog team, and found the weapons, wrote in his notes that it looked like the weapons had been placed there. Okay, that wasn't, in the trial, that wasn't turned over to the defense. So here you have an investigative law enforcement officer who deals with the dog team saying, this looks weird. These guns look like somebody just put them here. And so that relates to a defense and an issue that was raised by the defense in trial of Agent Ron Campbell, FBI agent Ron Campbell, who was involved in the investigation of a murder of a Muslim in Philadelphia in 1995, and it was believed that he may have planted, some evidence, but they weren't allowed to question him about that in trial, which was the Sixth Amendment issue, that I mentioned, so there was that, and there's, presumably more within these other documents that have yet to be produced. It took them 15 years, almost 15 years to give up those 700 pages. So I don't know how long it's going to take to get the other 44,000. I think there have been more given since, but we're still waiting. And so, that issue is on appeal. And as far as the petition to the Conviction Integrity Unit is under review. So as far as the habeas corpus, there's not really anything that we can do about that, except wait. And for the petition under review with the Conviction Integrity Unit, there's some waiting involved, but we can also reach out to these elected officials like the district attorney and let them know that we care about this, that we're serious about this, and that they need to do the right thing. And so you can go to freeimamjamil.com, and there are links there of ways you can support. There's a link to a template email or letter that you can print or email to the proper elected officials in Georgia. You can do that. There is, a link to, I believe, a petition on there. But you can go to freeimamjamil.com and you can do that, and you can support there. Other things you can do to support. You can continue to support the efforts of the Imam Jamil Action Network, as well as Muslim Matters. You can go on our website. You can donate. You can get involved. You can volunteer. We can always use the extra hand to do the work that we're doing. You can get involved and you can help right now today. So you can go to our website, Imam Jamil Action Network .org, and get more information there. There's students for Imam Jamil. If you're a student, you can start a chapter. You can get with them. They're on Instagram and some other social media. The students for Imam Jamil. You can do that. You can go to your masjid, go to your imams, go to your board. If you're a Muslim organization or a masjid, you can pass a resolution, in support of Imam Jamil. Write a letter in support of Imam Jamil. Sign a petition. Make your support of Imam Jamil public and known, within your networks, and encourage other people to do the same. You can, of course, donate money. There's a donate button on the freeimamjamil.com page. Towards the legal defense. And legal defense in this case, there's a launch good. And legal defense in this case means, hiring people to do some more private investigation and things of that nature. He has an attorney, so it's not for the attorneys that he has, but it's money to support other efforts, that are often necessary for a person to fight their case. The petition is to get Imam Jamil he's in Arizona. He's in Arizona in the Bureau of Prisons. He's being held in federal jail, although he's a state prisoner. The reason he's in federal jail, although he's a state prisoner, is because when he was in Reedsville prison, which is in Georgia, not too far from Atlanta, the Muslims wanted Imam Jamil to be their imam. They wanted him to be involved in the Muslim community within the prison. And rather than allow him to do that, the officials turned it into some type of suggested that Imam Jamil was some type of extremist terrorist action going on, and they were recruiting people. This is in very post 9/11 world. They thought all these people were trying to join terrorist cells or whatever, but because of that, they denied him. Not just denied him. This was an offense to every Muslim who was in that prison. They denied him contact and access to the Muslim community within the prison. They denied the Muslim community within the prison access to him. And then rather than deal with any of that, they shipped him off in the feds, and now he's in Arizona. And so we're trying to get him back so that he can be an active participant in his case, which is critical in any matter. A person has the right to participate in their own defense, and he cannot do that adequately if he's so far away from home. And it's just, you know, beyond that, there's an argument to be made about cruel and unusual punishment. His health isn't very good. He's got cataracts, glaucoma. From what I understand, he can't even really see anymore. And he's dealing with these other health issues that is a common theme with regards to the political prisoners that we're often talking about. Who are now, you know, elderly people that are still in prison. That's not to say that all you're a person can be a political prisoner. A political prisoner, as by definition, is someone who is targeted and imprisoned for their political actions, beliefs, affiliations, and things of that nature. And so, you know, broadly speaking, a person, if you go to a rally and you're holding up a sign and you get arrested for standing on the sidewalk, for that brief amount of time that you may be in holding, you're a political prisoner too. Martin Luther King was a political prisoner, you know, when he used to get locked up with the marches and all that stuff like that. So every political prisoner isn't necessarily locked away for 20, 30, 40, 50 years, but some of them are. And that's what we're talking about. And so we're trying to get him home. Like that's a big deal, and that's an effort you can support. He's written 2 books, his autobiography, Die Nigga Die, which is an excellent source of information on not just him, but of the time of the 60s and the 70s. The time that produced him and the time that produced, many of our political prisoners. And in his other book, Revolution by the Book, which I heard recently described as, Islamic liberation theology, which I think is a good way to put it. Although, I would also say that Islam is liberation theology is inherent within Islam, because we're seeking to liberate the human being, from any other God but Allah, including oppressors and tyrants, and often our own selves, and our less than pristine desires that we all may have. And so Revolution by the Book, by the book is referring to is the Quran, and the Sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wa alihi wasallam. And so that's an excellent book for Muslims, for new Muslims, for dawah, for your sinners, for your own shelf. The book is available on Amazon and other networks, and so you should definitely purchase it. You should read it. You should share it with others. And you can also use that as a means of keeping the Imam Jamil in people's focus and in people's eyes and in people's hearts and in people's minds. So those are some things you can do. And I thank you all for listening. And I'm glad this is being put up on Muslim Matters, so it'll be archived. You can see it again tomorrow. You can share it with your friends, as well as any other thing you find on Imam Jamil. Google Imam Jamil on YouTube. See what you come up with. Watch it, listen, share it. Google him anywhere else and see what you come up with. Read it, share it, remember it, take it seriously, inshallah. So I don't know if we have room for questions or, oh, here we go. Like some other people coming up on screen, alhamdulillah.
Assalamu alaikum, if you can hear me. So we're just going to go towards questions. And we have, let's see. Okay.
I'm ready.
Lots of support, people hashtagging and sharing the hashtag Free Imam Jamil. Can you tell us more about the tribunal that is coming up? We heard about it yesterday from Brother Bilal and the Jericho movement, but could you tell us from IJAN's perspective more about the Spirit of Mandela campaign and the tribunal?
Sure. From the IJAN's perspective, and just for full transparency, I'm also a member of the Jericho movement, and trying to do what I can to support that effort. So as you may have heard, if you haven't, the tribunal that's coming up in October is going to be a way for us to, create a, legal setting, where we are going to, prosecute the United States in a people's court, and make clear all of the offenses, abuses, human rights violations, civil rights violations that the United States has been involved in with regards to political prisoners in particular, with regards to the movements and communities that these political prisoners came out of, so with regard to the Black community, for example, and recently, and in times past, but times that have passed and been unaddressed. And so, one of the aims of it, will be to call for the support of a Truth and Reconciliation Commission, similar to what happened in South Africa. That's why the campaign is one of the reasons why the campaign is being called the Spirit of Mandela campaign. Nelson Mandela being one of probably the most well-known international, political prisoners historically. And when apartheid ended, one of the ways that they tried to transition from that society to a new society, leaving aside the issue of whether or not it worked, was a Truth and Reconciliation Commission, where people could tell the truth without fear of reprisal, without fear of prosecution. So for example, if you were an FBI agent and you were ordered to do some type of assassination, whereas admitting it now could open you up to some type of a prosecution if you admitted under the auspices of a Truth and Reconciliation Commission, we can get the truth out so that we're not having all these dark, bloody, nasty secrets in America's closet. We can get the truth out. And the truth teller, they may be opened up obviously to whatever, shame and embarrassment, but they won't get in legal trouble, for whatever it is that they did, that they will probably blame someone else for having done anyway. So that's one thing, and I'm excited about that part in particular, because we've also seen in the past year a couple bills in Congress that were submitted, calling for a Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Actually, I have one here with me, the one that was produced in the Senate. That was the last Senate, the 116th Congress. So just quickly, every couple years there's a new Senate, and so bills that may have been introduced that didn't actually go anywhere, now they're dead. So you got to resubmit it again. But there were, there was Senate Resolution 50 and there was House Resolution 990. That was, I'm not going to read this whole thing, but recognizing racism as a national crisis and the need for a Truth and Reconciliation Commission. This is it right here. You can go, you can search it, you can find it, you can read it, you can contact the congressman who supported this, and you can support them, and then hopefully they'll submit it again, and then we can start calling more Congress people and telling them that we think they should sign the bill, and who knows, maybe we'll get what we're asking for. But I'm really looking forward to that, and I hope that you all can join us. You can go on. God, I can't think. I think the website might be spiritofmandela.org. But we're looking for supporters because monetary support. We're having this thing. There's a lot of logistics involved. It's going to be in New York. I don't think we've settled on a particular location yet, but having the location, bringing in the speakers, producing the thing, and then having the monetary resources to move forward, pursuing objectives that come out of the tribunal. It's all going to cost. So we welcome your support. You can become a supporter for as little as I think $25 is the you can send in 50 cents if you like. But I think we're asking for $25 as a starting point, and then of course if you want to donate more, certainly donate more. I don't want to give the long web address, but I'm gonna pull it up just to make sure. But I hope that answers the question. And as we go on to the next question, I will make sure I got the information right for you.
So the other another question is that what are the reasons, like what can we do to remove the stigma from the Imam Jamil case that stops people from embracing the case as it should be embraced? If you compare him to other prisoners and other specifically, like with this rise of mashallah, we've seen this amazing rise in young people and protests all over the country for after the George Floyd murder, and just real it feels like there's a change in the country. So how do we make sure that his case is injected into that rise of popular support?
All right. Well, just so the website I quoted is correct: spiritofmandela.org. Spiritofmandela.org. You can put that on the screen if you like. So first of all, the stigma. All right. So he's accused of killing a cop. All right. He's maintained his innocence. We maintain his innocence. There's plenty of evidence to suggest his innocence. But regardless, innocent or not, there's a problem in society where a killer cop, and this isn't my own bright idea. Someone else said this, and I'd like to give him credit for making this, what I thought was a very poignant point. But it's not my idea. I can at least say that. But until we get to a point where killer cop has the same significance of cop killer, we're in a bad place. Okay. And so, killer cop referring to some of these, we have these cops shooting people, down in the streets, and they're getting their, the ultimate fair trial, they're getting all of this, benefits of the doubts and everything like that, and people blaming the victim and stuff like that. But if you call someone a cop killer, like, you're just the worst person. We can lock this person up for the rest of their life because they, did that. But as far as Imam Jamil is concerned, Imam Jamil is someone who has been on the side of righteousness and justice since 1960 something, maybe even when he was a kid. He was probably a bully stopper on the playground for all we know. So, we can say he was about justice from day one, but definitely since we know of in the 60s, he has been about justice. He's been about righteousness. He's been a stand-up dude. He's been a magnificent example for Islam, for manhood, for blackness, and all of those things. So if he got into a situation where he killed a cop, I'm gonna assume he did the right thing. He did what he had to do because we know what type of person he is, and we know what type of people a lot of these cops are. So if he had to do something like that, we're still on his side, no matter what, because he has credibility with us. The Atlanta Police Department doesn't have any credibility with me. I don't care who they are. And you shouldn't either, because we know Imam Jamil. We don't know them. Okay? So we can remove some of the stigma by saying, oh, he killed a cop. We can't get involved in that. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. Because if Imam Jamil killed a cop, the cop probably had it coming, or Imam Jamil was protecting himself. And as Muslims, we are not taught. And our prophet did not demand of us, our God did not demand of us that, hey, under no circumstances can you kill anybody. Like, no, there are some circumstances where it is halal to kill somebody. And so we can't just assume that just because someone was killed, oh, he did the wrong. In fact, the Quran tells you to do exactly the opposite. If someone comes to you with news, ascertain where it came from. See who has credibility in the situation. You just can't take things at face value. You got to do your own investigation. So if some cop or news department wants to tell you that Imam Jamil is a bad person, like, no, we're not listening to that. We're listening to Muslim Matters. We're listening to the Muslim community. We're going to find out about Imam Jamil for ourselves. And we know who he is. We've been knowing who he is. He's been that way from the beginning. He's that way now. And so he has our full support no matter what. But, you know, all of that aside, you don't have to worry about that in this particular instance because he's innocent. And there's plenty of evidence to show that he's innocent. So we can, you know, lift the stigma also by just, you know, telling the truth and making sure the truth is broadcast, you know, far and wide. And that is remembered. You know, and we got to know what the United States is. The Black community, we know who the United States are. You know, some of the immigrant communities, you know, you may have been fleeing certain places. You know, maybe you're Iraqi and you were under Saddam Hussein, and Saddam's people was coming, snatching your grandpa up out of his house and torturing him and stuff like that. So you get to the United States and you're like, hey, this place ain't that bad. I don't know what's wrong with them Black people over there. What they grumbling about? This is great. You know, so you might have had a point from that perspective. But now that you're here, you can also see that America has a extremely dark and dirty underbelly, and that, in fact, they the ones who put Saddam Hussein in power in the first place. So you can put your blame right down. I'm in D.C. right now. The White House isn't too far that way. Pentagon's over there. CIA buildings over there. The FBI buildings down there. There's plenty of people right here a mile from where I'm at that you can point your blame at. You know, but it ain't the Muslim community. It's not, you know, by extension, a lot of these tyrants and dictators that the United States has propped up all over the world to support their interests. Like, you know, this is the United States. This is the filthy United States that has perfected the art of racism and oppression because they just do it in such a insidious and often, you know, it's just ugly. So oppression here doesn't necessarily look like the way it might have looked, you know, back home, you know, if you're from somewhere else, you know, but now, like, you're starting to see, you know, it's all over TV. You see people getting shot. You see what the police are doing. They got the body cameras on. But we got to learn to give it. We have to learn to care. We have to learn to care because this isn't new. You turn in a history book, you can see plenty pictures of niggas hanging from trees and white people standing around smiling and grinning and slapping each other on the backs and having a good time at our expense. So what we're seeing now is not new. The era that produced Imam Jamil was the era of police brutality. That was what 67, 68, long hot summer, that's what it was all about. There were all these urban uprisings and rebellions and people burning down the cities in which they lived because of some police officer killing someone in their community. That's what it was. Those were the ignitions of urban. That has always been the ignition of an urban rebellion. A Black person, I mean, a white police officer killing a Black person has what been led. I mean, of course, there's underlying frustrations, but usually that's the straw that breaks the camel's back. And so it's nothing new. It's not new, you know, so we got to treat it that way, and we got to treat it like it's not new, and we got to treat it like enough is enough, you know. So here's another generation with another opportunity to right wrongs, and you know, and we got Islam, and we have Allah, and we have the Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
So the last question. So this is from a viewer, Alita Tore. Could we also see that just like Killer Cop for Troy Davis campaign, could we invite the mobilization campaign organizers that grew the mega youth in I Am Troy Davis? It was in masjids and also international. Should we at least connect with those organizers?
Alita Tore, I want to thank you for joining us. So back when I was a journalist, I went down to Savannah, Georgia to interview some members of Troy Anthony Davis's family, and I was, you know, involved in some of the Troy Anthony Davis advocacy, as was she. I really appreciate, you know, the support and hospitality that I received from her during that time, and I'm glad she's with us right now. But to answer the question, Absolutely. I mean, you know, we need to make all of the friends and shake all the hands and join all the arms that we can. And so, you know, we do have, as she's alluding to, like these other efforts that have been made to bring into prominence other people and other issues. We don't have to reinvent the wheel, you know, like, and she's talking about Troy, you know, the Troy Davis campaign. I guess we had Facebook, but we definitely didn't have all of the other types of, you know, social networking opportunities that we got now, like tweets and whatnot. So we have templates for how to do advocacy, how to get the word out, how to spread the word, how to spread information, how to galvanize people and get them involved. You know, so yes, you know, I'm Troy Davis, I'm Imam Jamil, you know, like, and so even that, you know, the I'm sure that wasn't even new. You know, we've seen other slogans. You know, I am a man from the strike, the sanitation workers strike led by Martin Luther King and what was that, Memphis? So, you know, so we have templates, we have institutional knowledge within the movement to draw upon to do what we got to do. We have elders to talk to. You know, I was talking to BILAL Sunni Ali yesterday, and, you know, he was joking about how when he was, you know, when he was in his youth, when he was 17, 18, 19 years old, they had a saying among themselves, don't trust anyone over 30. You know, so, and I mean, I think we see that, you know, I mean, sometimes I talk to, you know, new activists, and, you know, they don't, you know, they got their own ideas. You know, they think they're the hottest thing in the streets since sliced bread, you know, because, you know, they got out there, they've been to their first or second protest, and now they're ready to go and dedicate their life to the movement and stuff, you know. So, you know, we'll see, you know, what happens. But so I think we need to, you know, get away from that. I mean, and that's why Allah creates the human being such as He did, that you have youth who are willing to not care about reality, to not care about what happened before, to challenge notions, to bring in new energy. But, you know, the youth has to mature to a point where, yes, I have a new idea, at least I think it's a new idea, but it could be that it's an old idea that didn't work, and that's why the old people are saying, don't do that. We already did it. It didn't work. Probably shouldn't do it again, so we don't have to keep moving around in circles. You know, so yes, when you get older, you might get a little bit more conservative, a little bit more judicious, a little bit more you know, wise in what it is that you're doing, and so it doesn't look like the thoughts of a young, impetuous youth who, you know, is finding an outlet for his or her energy, a positive outlet for his or her energy. So, you know, we got to work together between movements, between issues, and between generations. Perhaps most importantly, between generations.
Well, thank you so much. And we have our lovely new guest here. And so thank you so much, Jazakallah khair, Brother NAJI. And I'm just going to introduce Sister, and please correct me if I say it wrong. I tried to learn it yesterday. NKECHI?
Yes, I pronounce it NKECHI.
NKECHI.
TAIFA.
Okay, NKECHI TAIFA.
Yeah.
I'm going to get that right now. So Alhamdulillah, is an attorney, activist, and author of Black Power, Black Lawyer, and My Audacious Quest for Justice. She's a founding member of the National Coalition of Blacks for Reparations in America, commissioner on the National African American Reparations Commission, and president of a consulting firm, the TAIFA Group. Thank you so much, Sister. And Brother NAJI, I'm not sure if you're going to be around, so if you want to say salam or say hi to Sister TAIFA, and then I'm going to take you off screen.
All right, I appreciate it. I'm glad to at least briefly share the screen with NKECHI, who is you know, one of the people who inspired me to go into law. You know, as a young activist, you know, there were, you know, there's different roles to play, you know, within the movement. And especially being involved with political prisoners, honestly, I can see, for one, if you go down, you know, certain roads you're gonna get jammed up, and there ain't gonna be nobody there to help you. You know, which is why we were having such a struggle, like getting people together. But also just looking at the different roles that there's a particular role to have attorneys who are produced by the movement, who are inspired by the movement, who are movement lawyers, and who understand the complexities of where the movement and the law meets. Because some lawyers, they might be excellent lawyers, but all they can see is the law, how the courts work, and stuff like that. It's not a place to try to influence public opinion or politically educate people. Like, no, this is about this law, my client as an individual, and I'm trying to protect my client, which is good. But in cases like this, the client is about the community. He's selfless in his endeavor. So he's not necessarily concerned with proving his innocence. I mean, it'd be great if he can or she can, but what she's most interested in some cases, is just using their case as a way to further the movement and to further, people. And so there have to be attorneys who can understand that. And when we look at the movement, we see that these people like NKECHI, like Bill Consular, like Chokwe Lumumba, and folks like that. And at the time, I was in college, and I know that the movement, the community will produce a Fred Hampton Jr. if you need one. Somebody who's just there, who has the necessary fire and can just like jump right up and start getting people together. You can't just jump right up and become a lawyer. You gotta, it takes years, it takes a lot of hard work, it takes money, it takes debt, six-figure debt nowadays. And so for me, it was like, I'm already in college, I'm almost done, so I'm in a position, where I can do that. And often, in order to get a lot of change, further entrenched and established, often things have to go through the courts sooner or later. So you got to have people who are able to pick up that particular wheelbarrow and push justice along. So there's a place for everybody, and that was a place where I thought, through my own privilege at the time, educational privilege that I was enjoying at the time, I could take another step, and I could do that. So I appreciate NKECHI for that. And I'm looking forward to what she has to say. Of course, she's involved with the tribunal as well. And so cops police asking me to move, so I'm gonna go ahead and acquiesce to this reasonable request that he's making. So NKECHI, good to see you. And I'm gonna call your attention to an email I sent you about this paper I wrote on reparations when I was in college. I've forgotten all about it. But I came across it in conversation, and so I hope you get a chance to look at it. It's about reparations, Black United Front, and St. Stephen's Church. But I want to go back and revise it, be prepared for some kind of publication. So I very.
So, Brother Naji, you were kind of going out, but thank you so very much. And thank you for your very excellent presentation and the whole chronology of the case of Imam Jamil. Thank you. And thank you for the organizers of this event. I'm going to be talking about this afternoon, Free Our Political Prisoners as down payment for reparations as part of Our Community Under Siege, the military attack against the Black community, political prisoners, and Imam Jamil Al-Amin H. Rap Brown. So, as stated, I am NKECHI TAIFA. I am president of the TAIFA group, and I'm a long-time struggler in the struggle, I guess you could say, for both political prisoners as well as reparations. So, prepping for this session today, it was like a nostalgic throwback to history. I'm talking about over 40 years ago. Working very closely with Brother Imari, President Imari Abubakari Obadeli, first popularly elected president of provisional government of the Republic of New Africa, in his crusade as part of the New African Independence Movement to get our Black political prisoners and prisoners of war recognized both domestically and internationally. And yes, reparations was always on the table for those seeking a Black nation, land, sovereignty as it is today. Reparations for us as a people and freedom for our freedom fighters were, as now, roots internationally and domestically, always part of the demand. And so I am holding in my hand right now, bam, okay. This is an October 12, 1978 press release issued by the Foreign Affairs Task Force of the Republic of New Africa titled RNA Asks United Nations for help for Black POWs and independence. And the press statement released the names of 17 people held in U.S. state and federal prisons whom the Republic of New Africa stated were not just political prisoners, but prisoners of war within the meaning of the Geneva Convention of 1949. And accordingly, the Republic of New Africa, in response to a public offer by Fidel Castro, which is here, bam, December 24th, 1977, okay, that Castro, that Cuba would accept Black prisoners as an exchange. So Brother MAURI immediately seized upon the opportunity of providing names. There's also the August 1978 letter President MAURI wrote to President Jimmy Carter, asking that Carter agree to exchange new African prisoners of war for persons in jail in Cuba. And then here's another, where is this one? Okay, this one was a letter to Salim Ahmed Salim, October 1st, 1978. He was the ambassador of the United Republic of Tanzania to the United Nations. He was chair of what's called the Special Committee on 24, Special Committee on Decolonization, with regard to the implementation of the Declaration on the Granting of Independence to colonial countries and peoples. This letter right here. Yeah, I went back into my archives, y'all. In that letter, Brother MAURI stated, the U.S. government has never accorded the status of POW to a single Black, Puerto Rican, or Indian engaged in liberation struggles against the United States. This is in violation of not only General Assembly Resolutions 2621 and 3103 with respect to the treatment of combatants captured in the course of struggles against colonial and alien domination and racist regimes. The U.S. is in violation of Article 5 of the Geneva Convention of 1949, Prisoners of War, which guarantees that all persons claiming POW status will be granted that status until there is a decision by a competent tribunal. And then finally, the letter called upon the Special Committee of 24 to facilitate the exchange of new African prisoners of war from the United States to Cuba. Now, y'all, Brother MAURI was in federal prison at this time, 1978, orchestrating all of this from Atlanta Penitentiary, where he was serving at the time. And this was the, this was the list of 17 at that time, many of whom were in Atlanta, but it also included Safia Ashabukari, it included James Tariq Haskins, it included Herman Bell, and included Veronza Bowers and others that he either knew or served time personally with. So what does all this have to do with reparations? Everything. Why? Because the issue of reparations for Black people in the United States was once in the not too distant past, was once unthinkable by mainstream America's viable public policy. But now, I mean, I'm telling you, it's like the buzzword from the top to the bottom, to the left, to the right. I mean, it is there. It has definitely reached the mainstream. For Black folk in the United States, what should reparations entail? I say 4 basic elements. Number 1, the formal acknowledgement of historical wrong in an official, unfettered apology for the dehumanization and atrocities of the enslavement era. Number 2, the recognition that the injury has continued throughout the years and still manifests itself today. Number 3, the commitment to redress by the federal government and state government and local governments and academic institutions and religious institutions and corporations and industries, the commitment to redress by all of these entities that sanctioned the enslavement and subsequent segregation, et cetera, enjoying unjust enrichment, and the actual compensation in whatever form or forms are agreed upon. Let me repeat that. The actual compensation in whatever form or forms are agreed upon. Freedom for our political prisoners as a down payment for reparations, not as far-fetched as one might think. In 1987, legislation was passed in this country authorizing the payment of $20,000 to each Japanese American detention camp survivor, a trust fund to be used to educate Americans about the suffering of Japanese Americans during World War II, a formal apology from the United States government, and guess what, y'all? A pardon for all of those who resisted detention camp internment. Did y'all hear what I said? A pardon. Part of the Japanese American redress bill, part of the reparations settlement was a pardon for all of those convicted of resisting detention camp internment. There is precedent. They have done it before. They can do it again. It's a sad commentary. Whoa. It is a sad, sad commentary, however, that the United States government has not taken responsibility for its role in the enslavement and pro-slavery segregation of millions of Blacks. It has never attempted reparations to Black folk. No, actually, reparations were paid at the end of the enslavement era. We just weren't paid to us. Reparations were paid to former slave owners for the loss of their so-called us, okay? It's never attempted reparation to Black people for the extortion of labor for many generations, deprivation of our freedom and human rights, and terrorism against us throughout the centuries. And it most certainly has never apologized for its war of COINTELPRO, which NAJI talked about, the FBI's one secret, quite illegal counterintelligence program against the Black movement. For those who are newcomers and who might have missed Brother NAJI earlier, one of the goals of the COINTELPRO was to stop the rise of a Messiah who could unify and electrify the Black community. The goals of the COINTELPRO were to expose, misdirect, discredit, and otherwise neutralize the activities of Black nationalists and their leadership, their spokespersons, their membership, and their supporters. Otherwise neutralize. Neutralization is a war term. It is a military term. They are the ones that brought war into this conversation. Neutralization is military. Okay, you might ask, well, then what was this war? Okay, y'all, there has been a war of genocide being waged against our people ever since we were kidnapped and brought to these shores. A war, a genocide that still persists today. And those of our freedom fighters who have been captured fighting against or defending against this war of genocide and have been captured and imprisoned must be freed. And you might ask, well, NKECHI, come on now. Genocide, Black folk have not been annihilated like the native peoples of this land. Genocide, Black people were not burned in ovens like the Jewish people. Well, let me tell y'all this. And I know this audience knows this, but, you know, we cannot state it too often because we didn't learn this stuff in school. And no, I didn't learn it in law school either. But the definition of genocide, applicable in not only just the international context, but in the domestic context as well, is number one, killing members of a group. Number two, causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of the group. Number three, deliberately inflicting upon the group conditions of life calculated to bring about their destruction in whole or in part, taking measures to prevent births within the group, transferring children from one group to another. That is the definition of genocide, which is enshrined in U.S. law, in the U.S. Code. But we don't think about it. We think about genocide. We can only talk about the native peoples of this land. We can only talk about the Jewish people. We need to uncolonialize our mind to realize that these concepts, these terms, unquestionably refer to us as well. But guess what? That ain't all. Genocide is not the only actionable crime. Conspiracy to commit genocide, direct and public incitement to commit genocide, intent to commit genocide, and complicity in its commission. And the definition goes on. This refers to us. The definition of genocide and who are the guilty parties go on. It says those guilty of genocide shall be punished, regardless of whether they are constitutionally protected rulers, public officials, or private citizens. That's it, y'all. Now, I know the Mandela Truth and Reconciliation and all like that, and they tell the truth and then they don't need to be punished. Well, under the Genocide Convention, it says that they shall be punished, regardless of who they are. And it's not just them doing the genocide, it's the conspiracy. You know, they keep hype us up on all this conspiracy, RICO and all like that. Well, we got something from them too. We just need to untrap our minds, be fearless, and go into court with these documents. So it's pertinent to understand that reparations is not just solely an economic concept. It's not just closing the black-white wealth gap, y'all. It's a political concept as well. It's a cultural one. It's one of justice. It's one of healing. Reparations are not just limited to stolen labor, but for unjust war against us, unjust war, and cultural aggression as well. The political essence of slavery is not merely founded in the economic exploitation of labor, but in the illegal imposition of United States jurisdiction upon the enslaved and her descendants. And when people resist that imposition, when people defend themselves against the war of aggression and COINTELPRO and genocide and are imprisoned, like the Japanese Americans reparations bill, they should be freed. Now, of course, that would just be a down payment on reparations, but it's a down payment that's applicable now. We don't even have to wait for HR 40 or S40, the federal bills that are in Congress right now. A pardon for all of those convicted of resisting detention, camp, internment. We can start off very specific. We're not talking about now a transfer to a third world country like we were talking about Brother MAURI and company during the 1970s. We're not now talking about a prisoner exchange, though, you know, that's not really totally off the table if the occasion occurs itself. We are talking about something really much simpler. We're talking about clemency, commutation of sentence for those who remain in prison. We're talking about pardons for those who have been released. There is advocacy happening, going on right now to President Biden to release categories of prisoners. There's advocacy going on right now. Categories, the elderly. Categories, those vulnerable to COVID-19. Categories, those who were sentenced before the federal sentencing guidelines went into effect and still being subject to a non-functional terroristic parole board. Those serving marijuana sentences where, you know, it's legal, but people are still in prison selling, and more. And indeed, the Justice Roundtable's recommendations, Justice Roundtable entity, which I convene and chair, included specifically the category of COINTELPRO era political prisoners. Can you believe that not one government official, not one U.S. government official from the COINTELPRO ever served one day in prison for their dirty tricks and their crimes as part of the war of genocide being waged against our people? Yet our brothers and sisters still languish behind bars, are subject to parole or in exile. Presidential or gubernatorial clemency for our political prisoners and prisoners of war. Let's not forget a demand for posthumous pardons for those who have already passed. You see, we don't need to invent any new wheels, y'all. There are already precedents with other groups of people in this country that's already been set. A pardon for all of those who resisted detention, camp, internment. Nobody was talking about that. I actually went to the Civil Liberties Act of 1988, which is the Japanese American Redress Bill, and I actually read it. And when I saw that, I said, case closed. I mean, I'm just saying. So I talk about it in every single presentation that I do about reparations because it's about education. I will not, at this time, catalog other precedents for reparations paid and pending internationally and domestically. I would just suffice it to say that with such precedents for reparations to non-Black people spanning 4 continents, it would be sheer racism for the world to discountenance our claims. And it is critical that our own search for reparations must of necessity be tailored to our own peculiar experience. Although some may demand only that their ancestral home range be returned to them, others that they be compensated for the indignities of internment and the loss of citizen rights, still others that acts of genocide and other atrocities against their people be atoned and paid for, some others that land excised from their territory be paid for. We, however, we who have experienced all of the above and more, and experience them for much, much longer than most, and therefore suffer chronically from their effects, we must ask not only that reparations be made for specific acts, we who have been such monumental victims are obliged to also ask what sorts of systems and policies and practices made this long ma'afa of injury from this war possible, and what must be done to eradicate these systems and policies and practices and the war being waged against us, the war in America, such that such injustices will never be so inflicted again. One area of repair that must be on our table, that can be implemented right now by the mere stroke of a pen as a down payment on a reparations settlement, is the immediate release of our political prisoners and our prisoners of war. We must struggle for those. We must struggle for those. We must struggle for those who struggled for us. Commutation of sentence for those still incarcerated. I want to lift up and just call out a couple of names, and you all put some other ones in the chat because I know I don't have them all. This is just some. So if you don't have a chat, you can just call it out, silently, but put it in the chat for those that don't miss. Imam Jamil Alamin, Sundiata Akoli, Mutulu Shakur, Veranza Bowers, Russa Maroon Shoatz, Mumia Abu Jamal, the Virgin Island 3, Rochelle McGee, Fred Burton, Joseph Bauer, Leonard Peltier, David Gilbert, and the list goes on. And hopefully folk are putting stuff in the chat if there's a chat ongoing or calling it off. So that was commutation of sentence immediately for those currently incarcerated. Pardons for those who are in exile, Assata Shakur, Pete O'Neill, and any others that are out there in the world, okay? Pardon for those who have been released. I mean, don't just get released. You know what I mean? They are subject to this prison after the imprisonment, the parole. You got someone, thank you, I saw Free Ed Poindexter. Yeah, put him on up there. I'll call it out if I see it pop up on the screen. Thank you. David Gilbert, I did call him. Thank you very much. And keep on calling out because we need to lift up these names, people who struggle for us. Pardon for those who have been released, whether they're still on parole or not. Their slates need to be wiped clean. Jalil MUNTAQIM, Herman Bell, Ramona Africa, and the Move family, Daruba Moore, the RNA 11, the Philadelphia 5, Jihad ABDUL-MUMIT, Mafundi Lake, Zolo Agona Azania, James Tariq Haskins. Did he pass? Okay, anyway. Brother Ahmed Obafemi. Oh, thank you, Nahanda Abiodun. But actually, Presente, I don't think she ever was convicted. I don't think. Okay. But yes, for those, okay. Now, posthumous pardon for those who are already departed. We will put Nahanda in that basket. Thank you so much. The Honorable Marcus Garvey. Oh, yeah. You talk about first target of COINTELPRO. President MAURI Abubakar Obadeli, someone who wasn't even at the house where the shooting took place, still had to serve 5 years in prison. Albert Noah Washington, folk who are passed in prison. Our sister, Safia Bakari, I'm sorry, I got to say it, I will never forget. 1975, standing up in a courtroom in Goochland, Virginia, Sister Safia saying, "You cannot try me in your courts of law. I am a citizen of the Republic of New Africa. I'm a prisoner of war." And hey, that's some bold stuff. There were some bold folk back then in those days. Oh my God. Oh, Tariq is with you now. I'm sorry. How you doing, my brother Tariq? Okay. Hope you didn't hear what I said before. Romaine Chip Fitzgerald, thank you so much. Let's see, I said, Geronimo G. Jaga. Okay, I should have put Brother Masai Ehosi back on the pardon part. Brother Abdul-Majid, Henry Shasha Brown, Atiba Chana, and the list goes on. Free them all. Free them all. Free them all. Reparations now. Release of our political prisoners as a down payment on our very legitimate reparations demand. Madasi Asante Atsana. I think we can open it up for some discussion. I think we have a little bit of time or Q&A on that. So I don't know if the moderator wants to come back.
Yes. So okay, this is excellent. Thank you so much. I'm going to open it up for Q&A. So those on, please put your questions down in comments and we'll bring them up. Someone also named Matulu Shakur. And
I definitely called out Matulu Shakur. He was the number, yeah, he was one of the first on the list.
The gracious Tia says the South needs your help.
All right, I want to help the South. Yeah, it's all good. Thank you.
How can we reach your organizations to join?
Okay, yes. So, well, I'm a part of the Jericho movement. So, anything dealing with Jericho movement, you should definitely reach out to that. That's on the political prisoners front. Maybe somebody can put the information for Jericho movement on the list and the, Committee to Free Imam Jamil al-Amin. I'm also a founding member of NCOBA, the National Coalition of Blacks for Reparations in America. And that website is ncobraonline.org. That's NCOBRA online.org. And I'm also a commissioner on NARC, the National African American Reparations Commission. And that website is reparationscom.org. That's reparationscomm.org. So there you go.
Reparations.
Yeah, reparationscom. I don't know if this chat I have is the regular chat, but I can put it in here. Amen.
Yeah, you can put it in there and we'll share it with this.
Okay, there we go. And I'll do, what's the other one? In Cobra. Oh, also, I am the author of the memoir, Black Power, Black Lawyer, My Audacious Quest for Justice. I tell about a lot of this in my memoir and stuff from personal experience from back in the day and all that. So you can go to your Black bookstore, or Amazon, or wherever, or you could go to my website. Oh, yeah. www.blackpowerbblacklawyer.com. blackpowerbblacklawyer.com. I just put that in. More.
Okay, we'll put that on. So one other, the other question is, how can we use your work as teaching tools for our youth?
Well, that's another timely question. Two responses, if I may. I have a couple of books for children I wrote way back in the day, that will be coming out in print, coming out again sometime before the summer. So keep your ear attuned to that. That's number one. Number two, Brother NAJI mentioned a tribunal coming up in October, international tribunal, charging the United States with violations of quite a number of human and civil rights, and including genocide. And I'm almost certain that the tribunal will be transcribed and made into fashion that it can be applicable for as a teaching tool, because it's going to go through the history of the violations against our people. I'm the lead prosecutor in that case. Najee Mujahid and other very stellar attorneys will be working on the case. Again, we don't usually think of ourselves as prosecutors, but we're prosecuting the U.S. government, y'all, for these crimes against humanity and the failure over all these centuries for redress.
Great. So next question, sister, is what can Black folks and allies in this country and the world do to continue the push for Black reparations in the U.S.?
Okay, thank you. Well, people need to make sure they're on their lips. When you're out there in the streets protesting, make sure there's signs up there. Make sure that this issue comes to the attention of the colonial rulers of this country. And this is very important because I'm really serious. When we're talking about reparations, release of our political prisoners as a down payment, it is doable. It absolutely is. It's not like political prisoners have never been released before. In 1975, Carter released the 5 Puerto Rican nationalists who blew up the House of Representatives in 1954 after serving 25 years. And at that point, we thought 25 years was a long time. We got Sundiata Kohli coming up on 50 years. We got Rochelle McGee. Oh my God, he's 60 or something years. I don't know. Imam Jamil Al-Amin. I mean, we're talking about some horrendously lengthy sentences. We've had political prisoners, albeit most of them have been our white allied political prisoner brothers and sisters who have received clemency. Susan Rosenberg and Linda Evans, who I was proud to serve on the legal defense team representing Laura Whitehorn. It appears as if many of our white allies, with the exception of David Gilbert, he still needs to be released, but have received either parole or clemency. Our brothers and sisters, our Black brothers and sisters, still, by and large, language. You know, we were able to get some out on parole, you know, alhamdulillah. I don't know if I say it right.
Got it right.
Yeah, okay. But we need, they all need to come home, and there are mechanisms in which they can. We are really, I'm talking to the White House now with respect to categories of clemency. They are listening to us. All of our political prisoners who've been down since the COINTELPRO era fit within that category of elderly prisoners. They all fit within that category of vulnerable to COVID-19. Some of them already have, I mean, Mumia was diagnosed with COVID. Sundiata Kohli is a COVID, survivor. So we are working on mechanisms. We are working on a category dealing with prisoners who were in prison before the federal sentencing guidelines went into effect and before parole was abolished in the federal system, to get them out, because the parole board is not acting, at least not on our political prisoners. So we're asking for that as a category, as well. In the whole COINTELPRO era, like I said, not one U.S. official has gone to prison. Well, there were two who were convicted, but they were pardoned. Edward Miller and Mark Felt, they were pardoned right after their conviction. So they never spent, a day. We got Judas and the Black Messiah film coming out. There's a lot of exposure going on right now. I was supposed to be asking the question of what can folk do. We need to say their names. We need to link these two issues, and we need to struggle for those who put their lives on the line and to struggle for us.
So while we wait for any other questions, please, we have a little bit more time with the sisters. So please put your questions down. And in the meanwhile, I'm going to share a few pictures that some supporters shared with us, and hope you guys will enjoy them. If you can recognize some people, or I see Imam Jamil here. Can everybody see these pictures? And then there was one more. Just give me 1 second while I pull that up.
Nice historic pictures.
Thank you to, I believe, Sister Ruth Standifort, who shared these.
Oh.
Okay, so those were the two pictures that she shared. They're quite historical, and so let me go back to questions. Is a phone number to speak to someone as well about a humanitarian issue for a loved one? We need your help advocating. Love the energy that you bring. Brother Jalil MUNTAQIM is saying the International Tribunal 2021 needs financial support to be successful to ensure after the tribunal will be able to file a civil federal court law suit and move to bringing the People's Senate.
My sister, may I just say, you just mentioned Brother Jalil MUNTAQIM. When I was prepping for this and going back to my old stuff, I found a letter. It's a multi-page. This is what you call carbon copy letter. That Brother Imam, it's a carbon copy letter, Free the Land, Brother Jalil, February 11th, 1979. This was from Brother MAURI. This was this was about one of your many fabulous ideas, Brother Jalil. Brother MAURI was providing some guidance and advice and counsel and all like that for it. I'm going to send this to you because it's like, I said, oh my God, it's like we ain't had no we didn't have nothing in those days. It was just you write on carbon paper and you send the original and you keep the copy. Well, he would give me his copies of stuff. So anyway, I just had to say that little tidbit.
That's historical. You should keep it. It should go in a museum one day.
I got a whole lot more. You just don't know.
So here's the contact for the tribunal, nationaljericho@gmail.com and spiritofmandela1@gmail.com. So I think that is, if I'm just going to check to make sure I didn't miss any questions. I did want to ask this, since you are working on the tribunal, have you spoken to other tribunal holders, for example, the Bosnian tribunal, genocide tribunal holders, the one that is now being put together for the Uyghurs for their genocide by China? And is there any means to collaborate or any efforts to collaborate with ongoing genocides right now?
I say absolutely. The primary organizers of the tribunal, the Jericho movement, Brother JIHAD, ABDUL-MUMIT, and Matt Meyer. Those questions should be more appropriately addressed to them. But yes, I know that they are collaborating with other tribunals, past, and present, and using that as a basis and a precedent as well. So the contact for the tribunal is there on the screen, and they will be happy to give you all of the specifics.
Okay, thank you so much for your time.
And just I pronounce my name, NKECHI TAIFA. If I were in Nigeria, it would be NKECHI, but our tongues have been colonized, and I said I'm a new African, and so I pronounce it NKECHI TAIFA. That's it.
Thank you, Sister NKECHI, and thank you for your work, and God bless you. And we are so blessed to have you here. Oh, there's another question that just came in. Can you elaborate on talks regarding reparations and political prisoners with the Biden administration? So that's something that she wanted to ask. I know from our end, as a Muslim human rights organization that I work with, our demands included release of political prisoners like Imam Jamil Amin. So I know from Justice for All, that was one of our demands from the Biden administration. And we've been working on anti-genocide for years. So that, but she would like to know specifically on talks regarding reparations and political prisoners with this new administration.
Okay, thank you very much for the question. As part of the Justice Roundtable's transition document to the new administration, the 117th Congress, we specifically listed the issue of a category of release under clemency being freedom for COINTELPRO-era political prisoners. In direct conversations with the Biden administration, I've taken at this point in stage, until we build up enough cover, shall I say, a backdoor approach, i.e., as I mentioned before, clemency for categories of prisoners, including older prisoners, those who were in prison prior to the parole being eliminated, but still have not gotten parole, those who are vulnerable to COVID-19. And all of the contemporary prisoners fit within that rubric. So we've been taking that approach at this particular time. When there's been enough groundswell of grassroots activity around that, perhaps we can and should go just a little bit bolder. But right now, the number of people's cases are still in court. People have different strategies for their different cases, and we want to respect and honor those various strategies as well. So speaking broadly, again, of the elderly, we're talking about people who are, you know, in their 60s, 70s, 80s. I mean, I'm just saying they fit within that category. We talk about release by any means necessary. If they can come out under elderly category, yeah. So that is the tactic that we use, strategy that we're using at this point with the administration. And it's very valid and legitimate, and it very well could be a winning strategy as well.
There's also Sister NKECHI. There's NKECHI. There was a committee.
Hello, Sister NKECHI. Don't forget our brother Brian Sales. I love you. This is Joe, your sister Zakia.
My sister, thank you so much. Harlow Brian Sales. And in fact, I found out old letters from Brian from way back in the day, around the time when he first went into prison. He's being held in at Jessup in Maryland. I'm currently trying to help with some support to try to get him out. NAJI was talking about conviction integrity unit, and Imam Jamil Al-Amin had something pending before that. Well, Maryland has similar units. In fact, these units are kind of popping up around the country, and we're using that strategy as well. So thank you so much, Brian, Harlow Brian Sales, our dear brother in Maryland. Thank you.
So, and also, could you speak, I know and Brother NAJI spoke about it just a little bit, but there was the resolution, HRES 990, the sponsor is Joyce Betty, from Ohio, who sponsored this resolution, and to bring it up again, asking, this resolution recognizes racism as a national public health crisis and supports the creation of a truth and reconciliation process to address historic, enduring systems and structural racism against Black people.
So may I say something with respect to that?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, yeah. So all these bills are all great, and they're important, the same as the Truth and Reconciliation bill that Congresswoman Barbara Lee is introduced, but none of them should take precedence over HR 40 or S40, which is the Commission to Study and Develop Reparation Proposals. Truth and Reconciliation is subsumed within reparations. In fact, you can't have reconciliation until you first have repair. Okay, you have your truth and you have your repair, and then you have your reconciliation. Okay. You're not going to have the healing without that. So that's very important to note, that all eyes really need to be on HR 40 and S40 at this particular point, and all of the other bills and resolutions fall within that rubric. We got to remember, no reconciliation until there's been a acknowledgement, apology, repair, and then we can talk about reconciliation. We can't jump the gun, or else it's not a real reconciliation.
And so this is the Committee to Explore Reparations, HR 40.
Yeah, the Committee to Study and Develop Reparation Proposals for African Americans.
So I'm sharing an action alert for there. That's something that we, Justice for All, had released in early during Martin Luther King Day, urging Congress to support this committee. So if folks who are watching could just, if they go on there, it takes 1 minute to send that email. Send an email to your congresspeople right now that this bill can go and support this bill. This will set up and fund a committee to explore reparations for slavery. So
not just for slavery, but for release of our political prisoners as well. That should be part of the reparations remedy. So it's for the enslavement era and continuing vestiges that are lasting down to this day. I just want to make sure that that's clear. Thank you.
So that's a really great point, Sister NKECHI. Is currently the way Sheila Jackson Lee has written the bill, does that include that? From what I remember, I don't remember it seeing whether political prisoners is included in it as it's written right now.
Yeah, what the writing of the bill at this time simply sets up a commission to make the recommendations. So once the commission has established, then we need to make sure that those who are appointed to be commissioners include that as one of the proposals. And like I said, if I have anything to do with making sure that people do A, B, or C, I will show them the precedent that is there. They passed that in 1988 with the Japanese American Redress Bill. They passed a pardon for all of their political prisoners who resisted detention camp. So it's a foregone conclusion as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, so that is something that definitely folks can add on. I'm sharing that on the screen right now. It's very easy to make take this action right now as she's speaking. You can add whatever you want to the email that has been set up, and it takes 1 second. Literally, just fill up your first name, last name, and send the email. So please do take that action while we're speaking. Well, thank you so much, Sister, and we hope that, we can keep supporting your work. And, oops, got the wrong person on here. Yeah. And so I believe that we have gotten all, and someone just said, question. Someone just said, people don't want to let you go. John Conyers introduced HR 40 many years ago, and it's still not even being looked at. This is another question. Reparations by way of dual citizenship still an option to have our PP/POWs released to a friendly country?
Okay, well, let me speak first to the John Conyers question. Yes, the bill was first introduced in 1989, but within the last year and a half, there's been more activity on the bill than there's been in the past 30 years. There are more co-sponsors than ever. A Senate bill companion bill has been introduced, and it's probably slated for a markup in House and vote on the House floor, within the next couple of months. And we are really working on a strategy to get the bill signed by executive order. Okay, so the next question was, there was a question about repatriation to third world country. Well, sure, that's always on the table. Okay, there needs to be some. I'm not sure if there's advocacy around that right now. That perhaps there is. I surely don't have all of the information about everything at all. I just know about the effort that went on during the 70s and 80s with respect to that. So yes, that should be something that should be looked at. As far as I'm concerned, part of a reparations settlement also includes repatriation, not just for our political prisoners, but for anybody who feels they want to repatriate. It includes those who want to set up an independent Black nation here on this soil. It includes those who want to make U.S. citizenship and a real multiracial democracy a reality. It should include all of those things that we never had the self-determining opportunity to decide for ourselves as a people after the enslavement era. So a reparation settlement can and should include all of those things. I don't have it up here right now, but there was I'm just going to close by this. There was a small book that was written in 1987 by Brother MAURI Obedeli, Brother Chokwe Lumumba, and myself, called Reparations. Yes, this was 1987. And it goes through all of those options, what we call, Black nationalist, Pan-Africanist options for a reparations settlement.
Okay, thank you so much, sis. We are so grateful for you to spend your time with us and share all these amazing actionable items that people can do. Because it's a lot of times we get together and we do, you know, we listen and then we nod our heads and then we don't take action. And so thank you so much for giving us actionable items and strategies to follow up on.
So should I just leave the studio?
Sure. We are just going to pull up our next speaker. He is, I believe, ready. Dr. KOKAYI Patterson, and he's all set up. Yeah, you're free to leave, and I'm just going to put it on pause until we have him on. So thank you again so much, and hope to meet post-COVID in face-to-face one day.
Okay. And free to land to Brother KOKAYI, who's coming on next. Okay. Peace out.
Bismillah, Rahman Rahim. I seek refuge in Allah from Satan the accursed. I greet my family. Assalamu alaikum. You know, this weekend has been a very, very powerful weekend. So much has been said. So much has been presented to us, to our community, as it relates to the issues that we've been struggling with ever since someone decided to come over to Africa and whip us up and bring us over here. This struggle that we've been involved in, and you know, I want to definitely thank my dear sister NKECHI TAIFA for breaking that word struggle down for us. Yes, that's what we're doing, and we've been at it for quite a while. Justice and freedom for Imam Jamil Al-Amin. Again, justice and freedom for Imam Jamil Al-Amin. You know, a lot of times in my presentations, I have to go to my elders and talk to my elders about specific points that are very, very important and that must be made in a presentation like this, because I don't want to leave anything out. And I spoke with one of my brothers, one of my elders, and he gave me a couple of words that I want to share with you all before we get into addressing the siege that our community is under. The messenger of Allah, peace and blessings be upon him, said, when you see an evil, you should correct it with your hands. If you're not able to correct it with your hands, you should speak out forcefully against it. And if you're not strong enough to speak out against it, you should make dua and hate it, make prayer and hate it in your heart. He then added, and that is the weakest of faith. When recalling this hadith, Imam Jamil Al-Amin often asks, who wants to be known for being the weakest of faith? So as we struggle and as we work hard, our commitment level, our focus, you know, and our efforts must be maintained. It's important for us to make sure that our commitment does not falter at all. You know, a lot of times people speak and, you know, everybody knows that I'm a doctor of acupuncture, a naturopathic doctor, and, you know, so many other things. But let me just do a little qualification here. Because when we talk about our community under siege, we're talking about all the problems that we have with drugs and violence and domestic violence and fatherless homes. And I can just go on and on and on and on. You know, I am 69 years of age and grew up in Southeast Washington, D.C. And in growing up in Southeast Washington, D.C., you know, there's certain things that I experienced. I had a single mom. My dad died from cancer when I was 3 months old. So he was in the street life. You know, I dropped out of school at age 13. I decided I was going to drink alcohol down in the shopping center on a regular basis. Eventually became addicted to heroin. You know, so 15, 16, 17 years of age, I'm running around in the street addicted to heroin. Went into, of course, the methadone programs, again, 10 times more potent than heroin in order to get you off it. So I was addicted to methadone at age 17, 18 years of age. You know, I was a criminal, as they say, you know, rob and steal and lie and cheat and, you know, do all of the things that we adopted as a behavior, because, again, that's not a part of our culture. So, you know, I, of course, had issues with relationships and had issues with just being able to be social and being able to deal with a lot of things that come with life. At age 17 and a half, 18 years of age, I picked up a book. I had gotten involved in a treatment modality that was African-centered, actually, a program called RAP Incorporated here in DC, and I picked up a book called The Autobiography of Malcolm X. That autobiography of Malcolm X opened me up because I saw that Malcolm, or I was just like Malcolm. I was a drug addict. I was a thief. I was a criminal. I was an individual who had no guidance and no direction in life. So it's important, I think, for all of us to understand that we're all victims of this process. And my shame and my guilt that a lot of times will prevent us from making those changes. A lot of times some of the major issues that our people deal with. And in reading that autobiography, I saw that Malcolm was a drug addict, a thief, a liar, a burglar. You know, his family heritage was disrespected as it relates to his behavior and what he was doing in the community. I read another book, a little pamphlet called The Hog, H-O-G. It was called The Hog. And this particular book outlined and talked about that pig, pork, and what that was, and the worms and the infectious stuff that was in this animal and where it came from and its origin and all of that. And I said, hey, well, I have to stop eating this pork. Eventually, shortly thereafter, I became a vegetarian. So by the time I was 18, 19 years of age, I had already made a decision that I was going to give up meat and make some changes in my life. In 1972, I met a gentleman by the name of Dr. Matulu Shakur in 1972, who was promoting acupuncture in our community. Acupuncture is just a wonderful, wonderful tool because we can prophylactically deal with all of the issues that affect our community. There are acupuncture points that deal with anger and depression and high blood pressure and diabetes and things of that nature that we're able to do. And this is one of the major reasons why Dr. Shakur jumped on that, and it's very, very easy in terms of its application. In 1975, I met a gentleman by the name of Dick Gregory, who again has been one of the forerunners in the health field, and began to study and get information from him about how to eat and how to address things like obesity. In 1978, my sister introduced me to a gentleman that everybody knows real well, Dr. Sebi. Dr. Sebi, who I met in 1978, worked with him off and on through the years, was able to help me with my son who had cancer at the time, who, make a long story short, just left my house the other day. So we were able to, as they say, cure or heal him. In 1978, I also began to study acupuncture under Dr. Matulu Shakur. And in 1979, started to work at Lincoln Hospital and was able to learn a acupuncture detox protocol that is very, very effective as it relates to substance abuse, compulsive disorders, and many, many of the other ailments that we deal with. So in 1985, I went to school for acupuncture under one of my mentors, Dr. Uyawana Trinidad in New York, the First World Acupuncture Association. And Dr. Trinidad, again, is a student of Dr. Shakur's also, and studied there for a while. In 1985, did that work up there. And in 1992, we opened up the first African Holistic Health Association clinic in Washington, D.C. to provide holistic services to the African community, to the poor community in particular. This, again, was as a result of all of my work with all of those individuals that we talked about. My mother, who was a retired nurse who inspired me, and my grandmother, who was a retired nurse who inspired me, and my mother taught me different holistic remedies for fevers and colds and aches and pains and things of that nature, even though she worked in a conservative field. In 2001, there was a graduation ceremony for me, graduating from the Maryland Institute of Traditional Chinese Medicine, master's degree in acupuncture, along with some of the other things dealing with HIV and AIDS. We ran an HIV AIDS house here in Washington, D.C. in 1992, and we didn't have AZT. We were able to use natural things, and all of our people tested HIV negative. We were able to get a clear-cut understanding of the holistic perspective. So I'm going to throw a few slides up to explain the approach and how we need to deal with you know, our community under siege. You know, we have to have a holistic approach to that. We have to be able to address all of the different components that are affected. So this first slide I'm going to put up, number one. Okay, we're getting that slide up. Again, the word holistic, as you'll see it being presented, it's spelled with a W. And again, when we talk about, you know, making changes, again, we're going to go by the book. Revolution by the book. We want to go by the book. So we're going to talk about the importance of reading and studying and gathering the information that one needs in order to address these issues that we're dealing with, you know, holistically. So we got the slide up yet? Not yet? Okay. So when we look at the conditions that we're dealing with in our community, we have mental health issues in our community. We have issues that we have to address as it relates to our body. We have spiritual issues that we have to address. So those are the three things, but one of the things that we leave out is addressing our community and our environment as a part of our whole being in terms of an approach that we would use. For example, a brother or sister who may have high blood pressure, if in fact they have an imbalanced spirit, you know, that pressure is going to stay up. If they have a calm spirit, it's going to stay down. With the mind, if they got a lot of anger, a lot of confusion, a lot of anxiety, that's going to keep that blood pressure up. And then we look at the body and we talk about what the person is eating. So all of those things are important in terms of an approach to deal with high blood pressure, spiritual issue, mental health issue, anger, you know. So what's happening with that individual spirit, the things that that need to be addressed that actually have created this angry spirit in an individual, traumas and things that they have gone through in life that affect their spirit and dampen their spirit and put them in a depressive state or confused state. So it's important to address spiritually what it is that we need to do. And we're going to get into that once we get the slide up. And when we address our spirit, yeah, prayer is involved. Okay, we got to go. We got to go. All right. So slide number one, we have holistic health, a community perspective. And as you can clearly see, we have a circle and you see the word in the middle. It says you. Again, we're talking about you and how you're going to address the issue. So if we put on the side of that, again, high blood pressure, we say, well, how do you address high blood pressure spiritually? Well, we definitely want to pray. We want to meditate. We want to do some specific things that will calm our spirit down. Again, with the mind, we're looking at how we can feel secure about the decisions that we make to address our body. Next slide. So when we look at the word holistic, we need a clear definition, and you can see how that word has been broken down, and we just added a W to it. When people hear the word holistic, they say body, mind, spirit. So we want to correct that, and we want to say spirit, mind, body in that order. So we want to address our body. You know, we have a lot of people who have high blood pressure, diabetes, health conditions, but they can't get their mind right because their spirit is off. You know, so again, that again has to do with that holistic approach and how we can address that, because people can be told what to eat, but if they're not spiritually balanced, if they don't have mentally their mindset and have the right information, they're going to make the wrong decisions about their health. Next slide. So we got the word holistic here, and we say holistic clearly says a state of being sound or whole in body, mind, spirit, and community environment. The state of being free from physical, self-imposed breakdowns. Disease is what they call them, or pain. Now, I put self-imposed breakdowns because we eat ourselves into the health conditions that we deal with. we involve ourselves in processes that break our spirit down and feed negative energies into our body. So if we address our spirit, that means, again, we're going to be dealing with some meditation. We're going to be dealing with prayer so that we can acknowledge that higher power and make that connection, you see, practical. We do that through the meditation and the prayer. Next slide. So in addressing the mind, you know, there's a lot of trauma that we've gone through, a lot of anger, a lot of frustration, a lot of hurt, pain, depression, all of these things. And of course, if you're incarcerated, these things are on a whole nother level. Meditation is important when you're dealing with the mind. Positive affirmation, education. We have to address the psychology or that psychiatric being. We have to address the things that stimulate the spirit, mind, body, and the environment in a negative or positive way. So we have to, again, relook at or re-educate that individual about how to proceed with their mind in terms of what they feed it. Next, we talk about the body. We got a lot of issues with the body. Now, there are designated diets that have been written in scripture, designated diets that have been written all the way down through time. We have to look at each individual and look at their health and say, you have high blood pressure. You can't eat that. I don't want to debate or have individuals think that they have a right to debate about what's been prescribed in scripture, what's been prescribed by a doctor or whatever the case may be. Let's take a look at what you need to do. So if a person has high blood pressure, it doesn't make any sense to eat pork. We know that. It would not make any sense to eat anything that's greasy. But again, if you don't know, you're going to hold tight to your beliefs. So it's important to go and get with individuals who know. I told you I've learned under Dr. Sabi, Dick Gregory, Dr. Layla Africa, Queen of Four, Dr. Francis Cress Welsing, dealing with the mental health piece. So my understanding of what it is that we need to do as Black people, again, is holistic in learning from all those individuals. So the next thing, dealing with the body, your diet, the nutrition, exercise, sleep, all of these things are important for us. Next slide. So again, that holistic approach is very, very important in terms of how we address and deal with our issues. Next slide. So to eliminate the need for a lot of struggle around what a person should or should not eat, there's just 3 simple questions that everyone needs to ask themselves. Number 1, is this food or drink going to increase my energy flow? Next slide. So if you're eating some food and you feel sluggish afterwards, don't eat it. Next slide. Number 2, is this food or drink going to make excellent building material for my body temple? Now, see, a lot of young people don't think that they need to take vitamins and herbs and supplements and things like that because they got the juice, you know. But be clear, you're using your juice. And when you get to a certain age, that juice won't be there. But because you don't know that, you're not even thinking that far ahead. You just think, I'm tired today, let me get a vitamin today. But that's not taught to people to look forward to the future as it relates to your health. You know, so ask yourself, when you eat something, and if you have high blood pressure, is this going to help rebuild my arteries and my veins? You know, is this going to help with my circulation around my heart, you know, etc.? Or is this food acidic? Is this food toxic? Is this food processed? Well, it's definitely not going to help to build or correct the things in our body. Next slide. Third question. Is this food or drink going to help heal any physically self-imposed breakdowns or prevent PSIB? Physically imposed breakdowns. Meaning that if you're drinking sodas, if you're smoking cigarettes, if you're doing your salt and you're doing your fried food and you're doing your Eggos and your Legos and you're running around to Crackdonald's and Murder King and Taco Hell and Wind Disease and Drunken Donuts and KFC killing families and children and Pop Lies and, you know, Chokers and, you know, all the rest of them. Y'all know. If you're eating in those places, you are going to contribute to all of the issues that you're dealing with as it relates to your energy level, as it relates to high blood pressure, diabetes, eczema, asthma. How many babies do we know that have asthma? How many babies do we know that have eczema? These are minor situations that we all can deal with if we know what to do as it relates to our diet. So again, those three questions are important. You know, is the food going to increase my energy? Is the food going to help make excellent building material for my body? Is this food going to help to prevent, you know, any self-imposed physical breakdown? So next slide. So I know a lot of people are saying, man, I can't give up that yard bird. I can't give up that chicken. I can't, you know, fish Fridays, man. And, you know, I can't give up my rice and I can't give up this and that and that and that. If you got some health issues, you got some choices to make. Now, if you don't have any health issues, you can eat your food. But if you got some health issues, common sense would tell us to follow the designated advice. Again, revolution by the book. Okay, revolution by the book. So there's things that we can do, you know, to eat right. Revolution by the book. This book in itself is able to give you an overview in general about any and every health issue that you could think of. You know, again, consult with your holistic practitioner, you know, on those issues. Again, revolution by the book. So we want to make sure that we learn some things, you know, as it relates to making the choices that we have to make. So that next slide, assume a positive attitude about optimal health and the means to attain it, meaning that you have to make a decision about what it is that you want to do in order to better yourself spiritually, your prayer, your meditation, your sleep, you know, your positive affirmations, you know, what you're going to do about your mind. Are you going to educate yourself, or is the 2 or 3 books that you've read enough? You don't want to involve yourself in a process of learning. You just want to pick and choose different times that you want to learn. No, it's a continual process, and you got to know a little bit about everything. So you have to assume a positive attitude. Next slide. Accept equal responsibility for your optimal choices. You know, I have a lot of clients that come in and say, well, doc, is this going to cure me? I know you're going to cure yourself. You know, again, it's important for people to understand that the responsibility is yours. Look at the word. You have to respond sensibly to what your issues are. That means you have the ability to respond, responsibility. So do you have the ability? Do you have the information? Have you adopted a positive attitude, a positive spirit? If you haven't, it ain't going to work. So you have to take and accept responsibility for your optimal, key word, optimal nutritional choices. So let's get some agave instead of brown sugar, raw sugar, sugar. It turns into acid. So we want to make sure that we're eating right. Next slide. You know, a lot of times we just like to eat. We just like to fill our stomach up and eat. Be hungry when you eat, okay? Now, that hunger should come as a result of the things that your body needs, not your wishful thinking. Boy, I wish I had me a Big Mac right now. No, that's not what we're dealing with when we talk about hungry. Know your body, meaning you'd have to learn about your body. In order to learn about your body, you got to do some studying. Next slide. Be calm and deliberate and patient about chewing your food. You know, again, we rush. All of us got so many different things to do that we rush through that process. So take your time. They say chew 100 chews or something like that. Let's get that done. Next slide. We want to make sure that we get our fruits and vegetables in. On here, it says to eat at least 50 to 80%. I try to do 80% as much as possible of your foods fresh. They use the word raw. Fresh fruits, vegetables, salads, sprouts, nuts, legumes, and grains. But where's my protein, doc? Well, you can ask the elephant, the giraffe, the gorilla, the bear, the rhino, the hippo. the strongest animals in the world. Lion don't even mess with these cats, and they're all vegetarians, you see. So they get protein, believe it or not, if you don't know, and this is the issue with us, we don't know and didn't know that there's protein in vegetables. Oh, wow. Goodness gracious. Yes, everything that you need is in the plant life. You know, it says, I give you the vine that bears the seed and the leaf, and that you should eat thereof shall be your meat. You know, here we call in the word meat. You know, so what does that mean? Let's get clear, because there's a difference between meat and flesh. You know, so in the scriptures, they use the word flesh. You see what I'm saying? But they describe the food source that you eat as your meat. So let's look at that word meat. If I'm debating with my brother and I say, you got on a black shirt, and somebody says, no, that's midnight black, and somebody interrupts and says, hold on, stop the argument. Let's get down to the meat of the situation. Now we're talking about the most important thing, the sustenance, what's presented. And here's not me talking, this is God. This is Allah talking and telling us what to eat. Next slide. We say collect accurate information about food preparation. And again, here we are talking about food. Here we have Dr. Laila Africa's book, African Holistic Health. African Holistic Health. This is another must read that individuals should get. You know, African Holistic Health. This is my best friend. He's an ancestor now. It's important for people to pick that up. Here's another one that we just want to show real quick. It's called Planet Heal. Planet Heal was written by my friend Queen Afua. And Queen Afua compiled a group of health practitioners from all over the country and around the world and had them put an article in. The presentation that I'm doing today on holistic health is the contribution that I made to her, to that book. So get that book, and what I'm talking about today is right there. So it says collect accurate information about food preparation. Here we got 10 reasons why one should shop at a health food store. Okay, it's important for you to go and collect information. You got organic foods there, you got herbs, natural vitamins, earth-friendly products, homeopathic products, sports nutrition, books, revolution by the book, books. Let's read, okay? Natural grooming products. You know, a lot of sisters and brothers use a lot of chemicalized products on their eyes, on their face, and in their hair, and on the skin to try to heal it. No, we want to use natural. Ethnic foods. You know, a lot of foods that you're not going to get in unsafe way. And midgets, they call it giant in DC. But the midgets in the unsafe way, you can't get good food there. You know, and helpful people. You know, people who have information, you know, around what it is that we need to do. Next slide. Cook your food slowly. You know, back in the day when we overcooked the food, you know, you didn't throw the juice away. That was the pot liquor, if you remember. So that's where all the vitamins and everything were that got wasted away. So try to make sure that you don't overcook your vegetables. Let's keep them nice and crispy so that we can get those nutrients that we need in order to move straight ahead. Okay, we want to try to fast forward to foods to avoid on my slides. Barbara, if you can fast forward to foods to avoid. Foods to avoid. I think it's like 31. Okay, now we have foods to avoid. Now, I know I'm going to be stepping on a lot of people's toes up in here, but so be it. You know, so cover your feet up for right now, because, you know, again, we're going to keep it by the book. We're going to keep it by the book. That's not me. We're going by the book. So if you have some feelings about this, that's another issue that you have to learn how to deal with, your emotions and stuff that'll stop you from making the right decisions about what to eat. So you definitely got to do, you know, as a matter of fact, sidebar, dealing with emotions, you know, a lot of times, you know, people are not, well, most of the times people are not taught or raised, from childhood up dealing with emotions. Here I have a sheet, and this sheet right here has on it probably about 100 or so different emotional adjectives or ways to explain and describe emotions. You know, these are the kinds of things that we need to teach our young people as they're coming up in elementary school. Not wait until they get into their first relationship and their heart get broken, but teach them about anger and hurt and ache and pain and sadness and depression and all of those things that we have to deal with on a regular basis just because we're here in America. So before they came, we didn't deal with that. We had a good time. You know, before Africa was invaded, there was no issues of child abuse and domestic violence and rape and, you know, all of these other, high blood pressure and health problems. We didn't even know what those things were. Furthermore, we were able to deal with those things back in the day, which leads me to this. This right here is the Hippocratic Oath. The Hippocratic Oath was written way, way, way back in the day, and they say it was written by the father of medicine, some guy named Socrates or Hippocrates or somebody, but we know that the father of medicine was Imhotep. And in this particular Hippocratic Oath, they swear to it. Doctors don't have to swear to it anymore, but in this particular oath, they had to swear and say that they would not give people things that would harm them, that they would not do surgery that was unnecessary, that they would not take advantage of a female client. All of these things are written in the Hippocratic Oath. But the key to it is that there's an African man, a black man right here in this oath, and they changed his name and gave him a Greek name, and we're talking about Imhotep. So they were swearing to Imhotep. In other words, the principles that he taught and what he stood for, they adopted. And 5,000 years later, they write what's known as that Hippocratic Oath. And doctors at one point in time had to adhere to that. So here we got foods to avoid. It says avoid dairy, watch the dairy, creates cholesterol and fat buildup and clogs the arteries, creates phlegm and mucus in the body. This includes your good stuff, your cheese and milk and dairy, your ice cream. I'm sorry, family. Take a look at these things. Next slide. I'm going to get past that one fast because I know everybody like ice cream. Okay. No refined sugars. Well, sugar comes from beets and sugar cane. You take that juice from the sugar cane and lay it on a white table. When it dries, it turns brown. But they take that juice. I would love to use that only. But they take that juice, boil it. The brown stuff separates out. They call that molasses, and they have this clear stuff that they call sugar. All the nutrients, all the vitamins are out of it. They call it the empty carbohydrate. Carbohydrates are like gas, and they pump us up in our body. That sugar goes in, pumps us up, and then we have a crash because all the nutrients have been taken out of it. So we suggest people to use agave and stevia and things of that nature. Coconut sugar, date sugar, things of that nature. We use dates to break fast around here. No white sugar, no sodas, no cakes, high fructose, candy, dextrose, corn syrup, Splenda, Equal. Well, everybody, when they come to me, Doc, I don't use sugar. I use Splenda and Equal. I say, well, go back to the sugar. That's straight dope. You know, there's a book called a PDR, Physician's Desk Reference. And if you get that book, everybody should have this book because it defines every medicine. Everybody should have this on their shelf. My mother always had one. And we could look up anything. We could look up aspirin or whatever. Guess what's in there? Splenda and Equal are in there as a drug. Watch the corn syrup. Next slide. This particular sheet right here, and you guys are able to get this from me. You can get in touch with Rashidun here and Imam Ali, and a lot of this information you'll be able to get. But here we have 146 reasons why sugar is ruining your health. Number one, it suppresses your immune system. We go down, it says it causes hyperactivity and anxiety and difficulty and concentrating amongst children. Contributes to the reduction in your defense against bacterial infectious diseases. Now we're talking about viruses. So this is one of the reasons why Black folk cannot stay healthy through this pandemic. Next slide. Sugar causes a loss of tissue elasticity. Now we're talking about high blood pressure and diabetes. Chromium deficiencies leads to cancer in the ovaries. Copper deficiencies. Now this chromium and this copper and calcium and magnesium, these are building blocks that we need for our eyes and our bones and everything else. This is why we can't see. Next slide. Can weaken the eyesight. It affects your neurotransmitters and dopamine and serotonin and norepinephrine, all of these different chemicals that are, activated based on stimuli. Hypoglycemia, acid digestive stomach, premature aging, malabsorption in your bowels. Next slide. It can lead to alcoholism because we know that they can use sugar to make alcohol. Well, in the jail, they make hooch. They use sugar, potatoes, and bread in jail to make alcohol. So when a child eats a bowl of Cinnamon Toast Crunch, in and of itself is 8 teaspoons of sugar before they put sugar on it. That sugar is going to turn into alcohol. The child is going to get drunk, get crazy, and then they're going to crash. So know exactly what you're doing when you do that. Teeth decay, obesity. DC's #1 in the country with obesity between ages of, let's say, 13 and 20-something. Crohn's disease, ulcerative ulcers. Now we can clearly see how bad this sugar is. Arthritis, asthma. Next slide. Gallstones, heart disease, appendicitis, multiple sclerosis, varicose veins, periodontal disease. Next slide. Osteoporosis, insulin insensitivity. Now we got high diabetes and we can't even deal with the insulin. Growth hormones, increasing in cholesterol because of the fat can't be broken down. Okay, drowsiness and decreased activities in children and you adults too. Next slide. It can interfere with the absorption of protein. You got a lot of people who eat a lot of sugar and are skinny as rails because they can't absorb the protein. I had a client the other day. She said, how can I gain weight? I said, baby, you eat sugar all day, don't you? Yes. So that's what's happening. We can't absorb any of the nutrients. Food allergies, diabetes. DC, #1 in the country per capita with diabetes, and we now have what they call juvenile diabetes. I've been at this work for a long time, and I told them years ago, I said, watch what happens. Children going to start getting diabetes. Toxemia during pregnancy. Here we go. Eczema. All of you parents out there with your children that got eczema, back them up from the sugar. No more Honey Nut Cheerios, Lucky Charms, puff this and puffy that and all these other things that they're eating. One bowl of those cereals, before they put sugar on it, you got a minimum of 8 teaspoons of sugar, and children should only have 2 teaspoons to 3 a day. There, in that bowl, they set for 3, 4, 5 days. Okay, women, 3, 4, 5 teaspoons, men, 4, 5 teaspoons, and we always go over that. Okay, next slide. It can change the protein. Check this out. Causes cataracts, emphysema, osteosclerosis. We got some serious issues. Next slide. Parkinson's disease. You see, so there's some things where we can break down. Acid can break down the nervous system. Okay, it can increase the size of your kidney because your kidney's overworking, trying to, break that thing down. It can damage the pancreas, okay, which produces your insulin. Next slide. It's the #1 enemy of the bowel movement. Y'all out there having one bowel movement a day? We got to have 3 or 4, and they got to be quality bowel movements. Moving right along. Myopia, nearsightedness. I was talking to a brother today. He talking about I can't see from here to there, whatever. It can compromise the lining of your arteries, make your tendons brittle. Well, why is that? It's acidic. It can eat stuff up, migraines and so forth. Pancreatic cancer in women, okay? It can adversely affect school children's grades, causing learning disorders. Next slide. Depression. You're pumped up and then you crash, Next slide. Alzheimer's disease, kidney stones. Next slide. Dizziness, you see, it feeds cancer. So if you have cancer, you don't want to eat sugar. Next slide. It slows food's travel time through the gastrointestinal tract. Now you see why you can't move your bowels. Colon cancer. Next slide. Gallbladder cancer. Sugar is an addictive substance. Sugar is listed in the homeopathic dictionary as a mood-altering substance. That's what cocaine and heroin are, mood-altering substances. Sugar can exacerbate PMS. Okay, next slide. Sugar intake can increase emotional instability. That's what that should be. Emotional instability, not emotional stability. It can take that away. Okay, next slide. It can cause fluid retention. Okay, all of you all who have this issue with edema, you know, it can create those kinds of conditions. Okay. I see we're running back through this again. Okay, go to slide number 62. Now let's briefly talk about what we want to eliminate, and then we can open up for some questions and stuff right quick. I think that we've touched on a bunch of things. So we're at slide number 61, and we want to talk about the things that we need to eliminate. You know, we want to eliminate the white flour products again. They've been bleached. These products have been bleached. You know, they're white. So where's the bleach? It's in the food that you're actually eating. Next slide. Avoid fried foods. This stuff can clog up your arteries. So if you're going to use cooking oil, use coconut oil. Use coconut oil. It's clean. It's not fat. That's what you should cook in. Okay. And olive oil is the other one. Watch those butters and all those other things because they can solidify in your arteries. Next slide. Avoid those hydrogenated oils. Again, coconut oil is the one that you want to use, and olive oil. Next slide. Avoid alcohol. Okay. Avoid alcohol. It is very, very destructive as it relates to the liver. Next slide. We want to eliminate these canned, boxed, and prepackaged frozen foods. We want to watch it as much as possible and try to eat fresh because these canned, boxed, and prepackaged foods, they have preservatives in them, chemicals, additives, and dyes. So we want to make sure that, you know, we eat as fresh as possible. Okay. Next slide. And it says, if you eat meat, I'm a vegetarian. And it says, if you eat meat, cut back 2-3 times a week. And the reason being is because meat takes 3 days to digest. So this is one of the reasons why we get backed up. In fact, every time we eat a meal, we should be drinking some hot tea and hot fluids directly after that. Okay, it's important, not directly after, you know, about half an hour, 45 minutes after you drink some hot tea. But that tea should be an herbal tea, and it should have some formulas in it that helps to break food down and helps with digestion. Next slide. We talk about the diet. Okay, we want to drink water instead of coffee. Okay, we want to eat as much color as possible from your fruits and veggies. We want to eat a good breakfast. Well, what are we talking about? What's the word? Breakfast. Breaking a fast. When we break a fast, we eat dates, we drink water because our stomach has shrunk. So we're not going to eat any heavy food because we want to get to rolling. So in the morning, when you break that fast, it should be fruit. My breakfast is smoothies and fruits and things of that nature that I do on a daily basis. So it's important, especially if you have a health issue, that you induce these kinds of things in your regimen. Okay, avoid the fatty foods, right? Easy stuff to be healthy. You know, in other words, find out what kinds of things that you can do to replace the milk, like almond milk, coconut milk, hemp milk, and things of that nature. What kinds of things you can do to replace the bread? Talking about Ezekiel bread, things of that nature that doesn't have all of those negative additives in it. Okay, laugh, don't stress, you know, be happy, positive affirmation, aerobic exercise, you know, and daily working out. Next slide. We want to avoid these foods. The dairy causes mucus, no refined sugars, eliminate white flour, avoid the foods that are enriched, no fried foods, avoid processed foods. And remember that these things are very, very destructive to our bodies. So with all of that being said, family, it's important for us to recognize what it is that we have to do in addressing, first of all, ourselves. In working with my mentees and working with my students, before they learn how to do any acupuncture or any kind of physical therapy, They have to get their diet straight. They have to get their spirit straight. They have to get their mind straight. So we sit down and we talk about our histories, and we talk about our lifestyles, and we talk about our hurts and our traumas and our aches and our pains and things of that nature before an individual can be open to being able to help or treat somebody else. So all of you that are out there, it's important for you to work on your spirit, to take and adopt that holistic concept and use that concept as an approach to the issues that you're dealing with. So I don't know how much time we have right now, unless we have some questions that people may have or any comments. Okay. Right. Yeah. Again, the whole issue about fasting, brother asked me the other day, he said, Doctor, how many times a year should we fast? I said, we actually fast every day. He said, excuse me? I said, yeah. You know, we have to break the fast in the morning. So that fast takes place from 12 midnight or from 9 p.m. until that next morning. 8 hours of not eating is considered a fast. So we fast on a regular basis. Again, we're talking principle here. We're talking, you know, conceptualizing what it means to fast. There are different fasts, you know, fasts that take place 30 days and, you know, fasts that have been documented and said, this is how we do this based on how we worship, how we practice, so forth and so on. Again, looking at each situation, you make a determination what you need to do in that process. So an individual who is weak and needs to be built up, we don't want them to fast. You know, we want to give them the nutrients that they need. In other words, you know, we want people to be able to fast also. You know, so it's important for people to be in a position to be able to fast, meaning that they take care of their body, do the things that they need to do. So when it comes time to fast, they can do that as it's been prescribed. Now, when it comes down to health and dealing with things that people feel are important enough to have to fast on, yeah, you know, so if a person is blocked up and they got constipation, high blood pressure, diabetes, and they're dealing with a whole bunch of health issues, again, that fast has to be organized and coordinated. So again, spirit, mind, body. So the spiritual part is one thing, but mentally, as it relates to a specific process, meaning having the information and the knowledge about how to fast is crucial and important. But again, we fast every day. The body is set up to clean itself every day. The only time people really get into heavy fasting is when they're sick, when they're clogged up. And the process that's supposed to happen every day, that they're supposed to make sure that happens every day, they don't do. So that begins to back up on them. Then there becomes a need for these fasts that individuals are getting into to try to correct something that they did. If you remember early on, I said self-imposed physical breakdown. So in most cases, we are responsible for the effects of our lifestyle. Okay. Red potatoes, are they good or bad? well, you know, potatoes are starch. So I tell all of my clients to do purple yam and white yam. You know, those are the things that I tell my people to eat. Again, if you're going to eat the potatoes, what kind of vegetables, what kind of greens are you eating? You know, we got black folk who love French fries, baby. We love the fries. We love the potatoes. We love the home fries. We love the French fries. We love the hush puppies, the tater tots, and you know, we tater people. You know, but remember, those potatoes are starch and they process into sugar. Process into sugar, vodka, hooch. You know, so just be careful. So you want to get the purple potato, the purple yam, and the white yam. Because they're very, very high in nutritive qualities. Okay. Uh-huh. Thank you so much. If you can go back to that first slide that has a circle on it, and shows the holistic circle. If you look at that circle right there, in the bottom of it, we see community environment. So the approach to dealing with our health issues has to include that. So individuals who train under me and individuals who get knowledge about their spirit, about their mind, and about their body, and they correct those things and they take them to their family. The other part of making that a complete process as a holistic individual and a holistic practice is to take that information to the community. So each individual has that responsibility. So as I learned acupuncture, worked on myself, worked on my family, worked on my close friends, I then had to complete that holistic process by what? Giving back to the community from whence I got that information. So that community environment part is important. So if we have trash cans, we want to separate our trash out and support the environment. You see what I'm saying? We don't want to, do things that will denigrate our environment where we live, throwing trash around in the community, etc. So it's important for us to participate and know that that is a definite part of our healing. So, yeah. Agave. Yeah. Again, the coconut and the olive oil are the two things that I suggest to people because of the fat contents, even in avocado. It's a cleaner oil, the coconut oil. So we prefer that coconut oil even over the avocado. Avocado is a good oil though, but we prefer the coconut. So with my clients, I put them on coconut because most of them got high blood pressure and some other things. But avocado oil is okay, but we prefer the coconut. As it relates to the brown sugar versus the agave. Agave comes from a cactus plant. They also make tequila with agave. That's where it comes from. You know, I know the youngins know about that. So tequila is something that they make. So again, that's that piece where it turns that sugar will process into alcohol. So the brown sugar, again, in a lot of cases, is the white sugar, and they poured some of the molasses back over top of it. That same sugar will become acidic in the body, whereas the agave does not, because it's plant-based and the nutrients and the fiber and everything has not been cooked out of it. So most times brown sugar is white sugar, and they pour molasses back over top of it to sell it as brown sugar. And again, the best one, if we could get it, would be the juice directly from the sugar cane. But that's the juice that they take, boil, the brown stuff comes out, which is the molasses. If all of that stuff stayed in there, we'd be okay. So that sugar in and of itself is an empty carbohydrate. So that's the difference between that agave and that brown sugar. Well, I appreciate that. I have a little poster that I bought that talks about that, if I can find it, but if I can't find it. But yeah, those ads, here it is right here. This is a little ad that we have here. And if you can see, it says, maybe it's not mornings that make you grumpy. Maybe it's what you're eating. But see, this is a smack in their own face. This is their advertisement saying, you might want to get something to eat in the morning, but that's what the problem is right there. So again, it's important for us to recognize, the information that's put out there. Remember, I stated earlier that we have to acquire accurate information about the food. So the only way to combat us being bombarded by these commercials and all this information that tells us to eat the wrong things. If y'all remember the little ad where the guy was riding around, had the white milk on his lip, I think it was Michael Jordan, as dark as Mike is, you can see that white milk. And they had him riding all around the city saying, drink milk, drink milk, drink milk, drink milk, and of course, everybody thinks that that's a good thing. you know, and they promoted that. But now everybody's clear that almond milk and coconut milk and hemp milk is 10, 20, 30 times more nutritional and even more calcium than your regular milk. So the best thing to do, again, as I stated, you know, revolution by the book. You got to read, you got to get some information, you got to get this nutritional healing manual, get you a big old nutritional healing manual, you know, and recognize, you know, that there's a bunch of information out here that you can get that will help you to really get clear on what's going on. We're talking about revolution by the book, health by the book. Next question. Yeah. Okay. One of my best friends, Dr. Matuba Shakur, and my instructor, my teacher, has been locked up for many years. And I have a poster here of so many of the political prisoners and prisoners of war, some of who still incarcerated after 40, 50 years. And some of them on this poster are ancestors and have moved on. That's an issue dear to my heart. I have a relative, my son, who is incarcerated and who contracted the coronavirus, and Dr. Matuba Shakur had contracted the coronavirus. And a lot of us have to sit out here and just, you know, just sit back and just watch those things happen. But we know that these things are intentional. We know that the system is designed not for individuals to heal. When they go into the jail and they go into these institutions and the penitentiaries, again, these places are designed to break individuals down. We talk about that circle. It's designed to break individuals' spirit down. It's designed to not feed their mind and corrupt their mind even further. Designed not to feed and take care of their body, but to disrupt the body every second, every day, because you're very, very pensive and you're on an alert every second. What kind of stress is that on the body? And then, of course, the environment in and of itself has to be addressed. Now, we got brothers like Matuba Shakur and Imam Jamil Al-Amin that when they go into institutions like that, because of who they are, because of how strong their spirits and their minds and their bodies are, that they go in and they have an effect on individuals' health right there in the jail. I got brothers who have served time with Dr. Shakur and talked about how he was able to treat them in the jail. How he was able to do that, you already know. Juche, we're going to figure out a way to do whatever it is that we need to do. And that's grateful, just being locked up in jail and still being able to provide service, just like Imam Jamil Al-Amin, continuing to educate, continuing to do the work in our community, even though he's under the grips of that beast. So with that being said, I want to end again with the statement presented to be one of my elders, Baba Bilal Sunni Ali. And it states, the Messenger of Allah, peace and blessings be upon him, said, when you see an evil, you should correct it with your hands. If you are not able to correct it with your hands, you should speak out forcefully against it. And if you're not strong enough to speak out against it, you should make dua, prayer, and hate it in your heart. He then added, and that is the weakest of faith. When recalling this hadith, Imam Jamil Al-Amin often asks, who wants to be known for being the weakest of faith? So with that being said, I say to you all, free Imam Jamil Al-Amin, free Dr. Matuba Shakur, and all prisoners of war and political prisoners. To heal the people is to help heal the world. Ashe.
أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا عبد رسوله صلى الله عليه وسلم. أما بعد, I'd like to open up by thanking everyone who participated in this effort. And I pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we will continue to produce such programs until we, inshallah, hopefully get our leader back home. As acting Amir, I'd like to try to close out by saying a few things that I think that Imam Jamil would say if he was sitting here today. And so I think we should concentrate on three things. And I'll start with the ayat from Quran, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that never will he change the condition of a people till they change that which is in themselves. And that change should take place at least on three different aspects. One, we should look at the change of our goals, the hearts, understanding the fact that the heart is the seat of love. And the Prophet ﷺ, he said that we should love for the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that we should hate for the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right now, one of the problems that I see here today, particularly among the indigenous Muslims, those who were born here in the United States of America and share a certain common historical experiences, is that we tend to confuse our love. And that might be because many of us have come from the Jahiliyyah, and therefore we have not left totally the ways of the Jahiliyyah, and it begins to mix up with the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then we find ourselves in positions where we should be in tune with Allah's love and in tune with Allah's hate. Sometimes these feelings, these emotions that we have, the love that we have, sometimes conflicts with the love that has been defined for us in that particular hadith. So it's very important that we purify the whole, purify the hearts, and make sure that we love for the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and hate for the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Number two, we need to change our ideology. And that comes back to the Islamic schools teaching our children not only to read the Quran and to study the hadiths. We don't just want to give them information, but we want to get them or bring them to the capacity where they're able to think like the Prophet ﷺ and his companions, so that in every action that they engage in, they should always be asking the questions, what would Rasulullah ﷺ do in this particular situation? And this is why we need to reenact the institutions of our madrasas, our Islamic schools, so that we could again provide the proper socialization process, which will help our children to be able to think like Muslims as opposed to just gathering information. And number three, what we need to do is we need to get back to building institutions, masjids. They don't have to be big buildings, but they can be places of worship. We reflect upon the fact that the first mosque of the Prophet ﷺ was not necessarily a big building, but it was in fact a structure under which people could go to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That worship is very important because it provides for us a spiritual therapy. And that therapy was always enhanced and talked about by Imam Jamil, particularly with the Fajr and the Isha. He used to always tell us that the Fajr and the Isha are very important because that was the two salats that the Prophet ﷺ pointed out would be hardest among the hypocrites. So we need to get back to that particular concept. And also I wanted to go back just briefly in terms of the madrasas, in terms of our Muslim children, thinking like the companions, thinking like the Prophet ﷺ and his community. We used to ask a question that I think needs to be asked in this day and time. And that is, if you ask your Muslim children, how many pro basketball players or multiple stars, to name the top players in the NBA, I think most of them would just kind of rattle it off right away. But then when you ask them to name 10 companions of the Prophet ﷺ, I'm not so sure that our youth would be able to do that. So therefore the priorities, there's a problem there, and it becomes our job and our responsibility to begin to teach our youth the priorities that we should make the Prophet ﷺ and his community and his Sahabas the heroes, as opposed to, you know, LeBron James or you know, Kevin Durant or whatever. You know, not to good, you know, I'm not saying anything against them, but though the heroes that we look to are those heroes that we admire for the establishment of this deen. Again, it comes under the category of loving for the pleasure of Allah. And then finally, again, when I talk about those institutions, we need to develop our spiritual institutions, our masjids, if, you know, however small it might be, build or rebuild back our madrasas so that our children can have the correct ideology. And number three, we need to develop within our communities, within the areas of our communities, the proper economics. We need to open up stores and businesses so that we can make it very easy for our brothers and our sisters to be able to get to the masjid for the places of worship. And in closing out, we should remember this. The concept of community is very important, because as community, if we're doing it properly, then we become a therapeutic community under which we are mirrors to one another, which means is that the primary program in community should always be nasiha. And that is counseling our brothers and sisters, making sure that we are mirrors, that we are constantly reminding them of the true path of Allah and his messenger, alayhi wa salatu salam. So on that note, I'll close with the dua, and again, say shukran, jazakallah khaira, you know, to all those who have maintained the effort and continue to maintain this effort until we get our leader, our Mayor Imam Jamil home. And I'll close with a dua, inshallah. Wal as inna al-insana lafi khusr illa alladhina amanu wa amilu salihati wa tawassaw bil haqq wa tawassaw bis sabr. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun wa salamun alal mursalin walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Now, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.